It's the afternoon of day 24 of the Alec Murdaugh murder trial. Whew, day 24 million of this trial. The defendant is still on the stand entering cross-examination. He started cross-examination yesterday afternoon. All morning was cross-examination this morning, and now we are still in cross-examination. I think the jury is going to get tired if Creighton Waters continues to go through the fact that Alec Murdaugh lied. We know. If there's anything everyone is certain of, it's that Alec Murdaugh lies about a lot of shit. Everybody is real clear on that. The timeline for the night of June 6th, 7th, the night of June 7th is what people want to know about. He talked a little bit about what was going on June 6th and moved past it pretty quickly, though I thought it was really helpful. And now we are going through that timeline. I don't know if Creighton's going to draw out this cross-examination towards the end of the day or if we're almost done. I don't know, but I think he's probably going to draw it out a little bit longer. Alec has been cracking back at him about the specificity of his questions. Ooh, as we are just like spitting on ourselves because I ate so fast. I'm just like all the things. But he's been pushing back on the specificity of Creighton's questions, but I think a lot of it has been in a really fair way. Some of it has felt evasive, but a lot of it has been, well, did you say this or this? Because again, Alec Murdaugh is a lawyer, and you can see him on the stand trying to process where Creighton is going with the questions. Because in cross-examination, you lay the trap, right? You ask the questions that build to the questions that build to, they have nowhere to go but to give the answer that you want. Children also do this when they argue. They're like, but you said I could have a cell phone when I'm 13 and I am now 13, but you said this and but you said that. Your kids will cross-examine you if you give them the wrong answer and will lead you in so that there's nothing you could do. It's like, haha, but you said. Haha, but you said. And that is a thing too. So with all of that, we're going to roll the intro. We're waiting for the court to come back. And it's crazy. No one else at all has been suspected in this crime. True. And the defense is going to argue, like everything in this case, the defense is going to argue law enforcement was out to get him at the beginning and they rushed to judgment and they did a flawed investigation to point the finger at Alec Murdaugh. And they released a press release the day after and said the public is not in danger. And the prosecution is going to say, right, because there is no one else, because it is Alec Murdaugh. Who would come against this family? Who would dare stand against this family in this area and take their family guns and be on the property and off the property with Alec never knowing and leave him alive and put the dogs back in the kennels? Who else? It goes both ways. So with that, we're going to roll the intro. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being Law Nerds. For all of you checking in on the road to 700K, we are just about 300 subscribers away from that. So if you like the commentary, subscribing to the channel is a great way to support it. It does matter for YouTube. It does matter for the robots that we call the algorithm. It actually does also bump us up onto the live trending page so more people can find us, which is a big deal because normally we are bumping up against legacy media in that live trending page, even when they have less concurrent viewers. Look, we smashed legacy media coverage during Depp v. Heard, and we're just going to continue to do it. We build our own shit over here, and we just do it our own way. We've built our own table. We're all used to trying to fit into everybody else's spaces, and we're done. We create our own spaces, and we have our own conversations, and we're going to keep doing it. Law Nerds, let's go!
Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the Law Nerds unite to talk about facts, not... Let's get into it.
The judge is still not on the bench yet. That's not uncommon. This court takes its sweet tea time, which honestly I am blessed for because I am a human that believes time is a construct. And so I kind of get to places in my own time. So the fact that this court takes a little bit of its own time is so damn appreciated. But they should be coming back to court shortly. We're going to answer some questions. I'm going to kind of round up what I think about this morning. Where am I at on this case? Realistically, I think this is a case that is kind of ripe for a hung jury. It just is. People are going to have very strong feelings one way or the other. And then there's going to be a bunch of people stuck in the middle who are like, I have questions. I don't know. And that is going to be a difficulty for these juries' deliberations. Also, let's remember This was estimated at a 3-week case. The jurors were cleared for 3 weeks. On Monday, we are going into week 6 of this trial. We have lost multiple jurors because of illness, because of medical appointments, because, well, no, that's it. It's been 1 went to the ER, 2 tested positive for the vid, and 1 was at the doctor's not feeling well. So everybody has kind of bounced for illness. We are down to just a few alternates. And if they do not wrap this, remember, you can still lose alternates during deliberation. It happens all the time. I think the jury's probably invested, but they were only approved for what, 3 weeks? To go 3 weeks over time is just, it's just difficult. And juror attrition is a real thing here. Juror exhaustion is a real factor here. I have done short trials. I have done long trials. You can see it on their faces. If they're invested and it's just a long trial and it's still clipping along, you can tell that the jurors are still invested. But as things start to drag, especially as you're getting into the same evidence over and over and over again, you can see it on their faces. And the prosecution needs to be most mindful. The party that drags it out is normally the party that it's held against, because it's like, we see you, Creighton. You're asking the same question again and again and again. Stop it. So I think with that, the jury can see Creighton Waters asking these questions. And I don't think in all of them that it's because Alex being evasive. Sometimes, yes, but not all the time. All right, the judge is coming out onto the bench. We don't have audio yet. Oh, because I had it turned off. Let's see if the judge has anything to say or they're going to put anything on the record. Oh, and as we can hear the judge, y'all, look what you did. Look what you did. Look what you did, law nerds.
Mr. Griffin, you wanted to put something on the record?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. During cross-examination of Mr. Murdaugh,
I think this is fair.
he had testified that in relation to the financial crimes, that he had tried to meet with the Attorney General's office, and that on multiple occasions.
What is on his phone? Jim, what's on your phone? Is that a Facebook post? Are those your notes?
From the get-go, had always been willing to sit down with them. He was specifically talking about the financial investigation and the charges which
he didn't
received
specify
as a
that.
result of those investigations.
No, he didn't specify that.
Following up to that questioning,
He didn't specify
in
that.
that answer, Mr. Waters then went to Mr. Murdaugh's testimony and the information he provided about being down at the kennel, and he said you had never provided that information to law enforcement and other people
He
until
did specify it?
today or
I don't
yesterday.
know if he specified that.
And Your Honor, that is a direct violation of Dole v. Ohio, where the Supreme Court said that cross-examining the defendant about his failure to have told an exculpatory story after receiving Miranda warnings at the time of his arrest is a due process violation.
After
The court goes
receiving
on to
Miranda
say
warnings at
the
the time of his
defendant's
arrest.
post-arrest silence cannot be
Post-arrest
used
silence.
against him. Violates due process. And that's exactly what happened on cross-examination. So I want to make clear the grounds for our objection. Also would like to move to strike the question, strike the answer, and get a curative jury instruction that they are not to consider any failure of the defendant to come forward with exculpatory information after his arrest relating to the murder charges. Thank you.
Mr. Waters.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Clearly, this defendant has given statements on multiple occasions, and
Including
that operates as a
post-arrest.
waiver under Doyle. Additionally, my question was not so limited as Mr. Griffin says, and it was in fact the defendant who made a point of saying that he had repeatedly tried to talk and put that in issue.
I think
at
that's
which point
exactly
this was directly responsive to what he brought up. Additionally, this was also, all that was discussed were public statements of his counsel, who was an agent on his behalf and attributable to him. So there's no Doyle violation here. If Mr. Murdaugh had claimed his right to silence from the beginning and had kept that throughout, then the state would be precluded from commenting on
We
the
talked about
exercise
that
of his right to remain silent.
earlier.
But one thing we know about Mr. Murdaugh is he has not remained silent at any point during this process, and he's the one that brought up this false claim that he had been begging to tell the kennel story, when in fact he did not do so till yesterday.
And that's what I thought. He was talking about not trying to give information on
Doyle
financial
primarily
crimes.
addresses the issue of post-arrest silence.
This
If the
defendant's
direct-
all,
if
yep,
a-
yep, yep.
An accused is silent following an arrest, then
That's what I
it's
said.
improper to comment on a post-arrest silence. It does not allow an accused or a person who's suspected to give contradictory information or to voluntarily give a statement or to voluntarily give a misstatement.
Well, I was a
as has
prosecutor,
been
you all. I know a lot about
acknowledged
Doyle
here.
error.
I do not find any Doyle violation, and the record is protected. I certainly understand the defense raising any and all possible issues, and they can be raised, and you've done it here. The record is protected, but all motions are denied.
The judge is like, you've done your job, we're moving on. The defendant did not remain silent.
Bring the jury.
Bring the jury! The defendant did not remain silent, and that's why there's no Doyle error. Look, here's the thing. This defendant did say on the stand, and I disagree with Jim. He was saying on the stand, I've wanted to clear this up with you. I've wanted to tell you these things. I didn't interpret that as limited to the financial crimes. I thought the defendant was talking about all of it. I wanted to clear this up with you. As late as like November 2022, I wanted to tell you all of this, and y'all didn't listen to me. I interpreted that to mean all things, not just the financial crimes. So when Jim was limiting it to the financial crimes, I don't think he did. I think Alec was saying, I wanted to clear everything up with you. I might be misremembering. Memories differ. And this is why, if you see it in the chat, some of you going, yes, he did, no, he didn't. This is what jurors have to deal with, is I remember it this way versus I remember it that way. And that's a big thing that jurors have to talk through, remembering it differently. I thought he was very much talking about everything, not just one. Don't worry, we're gonna bring the jury march. Of course you will cause, that's what you do, Emily, defend the judge. I don't think I just defend the judge. There's definitely been times in this case where I've disagreed with this judge, but I can see Doyle error. I mean, it's something very clear.
You may proceed.
The defense is protecting their case,
Yes, sir.
but I don't think they were right in this one.
Murdaugh, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Give that mic up a little bit, please.
Excuse me.
I thought he was talking about everything, but that's just, I thought he was talking about everything.
When we left off, we were talking about at what point during that interview in the car with Dave Owen that you decided to start lying about
I think that's
the
a
murders of
bad
your wife and son.
question.
I'm going to pick up this video real quick. Not going to play the whole thing.
I think the more powerful line of questioning is you lied so
start
frequently
from
you
2
don't know
minutes
when
and
you
9
started
seconds.
lying. He didn't decide to lie. He just does lie, Creighton.
Just start the top, take your time.
Like when I came back here, I mean, I pulled up and I could see him, and, I knew something was bad. I ran out. I knew it was really bad.
Back to the interview.
My boy over there, I could see it was.
The defense did play the 911 call earlier, though.
And I could see his brain on.
He might play the 911 call after this, though.
And I ran over to Maggie. Actually, I think I tried to turn Paul over first. I tried to turn him over, and I don't know, I figured it out. His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I started to try to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then I put it back down really quickly. Then I went to my wife,
both.
and I could see.
In the back seat is a lawyer
Did you
and
touch
a
Maggie
deputy
at all?
I
sheriff.
did. I touched them both.
Okay.
I tried to take, I tried to do it
Boss
as
Attorney Bree,
limited as
good to see you.
possible, but I tried to take their pulse on both of them. And,
Tried to take the
you
pulse on
know,
both of
I
them.
called 911,
Then called 911.
pretty
Well,
much
he
right
said
away.
I called 911 pretty much right
And
away. So you can
She was very
argue
good.
the time. This on his lap is a card
I talked
from
to
the
her.
sheriff.
I told her I was gonna get off the phone to
That's-
call some family members.
The person he's talking to, that's
I
their
did
card
that.
on his lap.
What family members did you call? You
I
know?
called my brother Randy, and I called my brother John. And I tried to call a little boy, a real good friend that's right around the corner from here, but I didn't get him.
I hate
What all
listening to
was
this interview.
around,
It always,
Paul,
it
when you
just,
walked up?
Blood.
I can't.
Anything else?
I mean, there was some body things, yes, sir.
I mean, like any other evidence? I know you said the phone fell out of the pocket, but did you see anything else
Guns,
that didn't belong or
casings.
shouldn't belong or that wasn't part of Paul?
No, sir, not good. No, sir.
How about Maggie?
No, sir.
You didn't see anything around them? What made you
I'll have
come
to
out
look when he
here
gets out of the
tonight?
car.
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on
Hello,
them,
Alexia, at the Rhode
and
Island AG's office.
Maggie's
I
a
bet you
dog
guys are
lover.
riveted watching
She
this.
fools with the dogs. And
Question
I knew
is,
she'd gone
would
to
you
the
have
kennel.
filed it?
I was at the house.
Just to be clear, you say you hadn't made the conscious decision to start lying about your wife and son's murder right there.
I don't
correct?
like this line of questioning at all.
I don't believe so.
Okay, well, let's continue on.
Mr. Waters, I can't tell you exactly when that decision occurred.
He just lies.
You can't describe to the jury the moment you decided to lie about your wife's son and your wife and son's murder.
What's he going to ask? Can you explain to the jury how you decided
I
to
can't
kill
tell you
them?
exactly when that moment occurred.
The no blood is a bigger issue than the lying for me at this moment.
That when David Owen asked you about your relationships, that was a trigger point, correct?
Well,
did
that
say
was
that.
certainly one of the things that contributed or made me paranoid.
Okay.
Now, you know, there were already things that had gone on that occurred, as I said, that put me in that,
Just a point of
Mindset.
interest.
Yeah.
but
The thermostat today
Exactly
is
when
back
I
at
decided
69.
to
It was
lie
at
about that,
66 for
I can't
days.
tell you.
And then it was at
So,
69.
The things
Who's fighting
again,
over
you
the
talked
thermostat?
about your dope paranoia, the fact they'd taken GSR, and you talked about the advice of your law partners and Sheriff Hill and Greg Alexander, and then you talked about your distrust of SLED somehow from this
What feed is the?
circumstances and demeanor
Who's
of this
watching the
interview
feed at the
right now.
desk?
Correct?
No, my distrust from SLED didn't arise from this
Oh.
interview. My distrust for SLED arose from a couple of things, and it's really
tell.
several things. It arose from
Turn
the
this
way
up. I want to know.
they had been involved
Vote case?
SLED had been involved in the investigation into Paul's criminal charges, and they had been involved in, there was an issue that had gone on with some rumors about Buster and Paul. They had been involved in that, where,
Stephen Smith?
you know, Buster nor Paul had anything to do with what I'm talking about. And
Huh.
SLED never said that, even though they told their lawyer that, they never say that. And there had been another incident where SLED had charged Greg Alexander, my friend in this case, they charged him. And in fact, I thought the agent that was involved in that was David Owen, but the charges against Greg Alexander were so they were so wrong that my dad and I made a conscious decision, even though he was a career prosecutor, made a decision to go to the courthouse and sit with Greg Alexander while his trial went on, because
To signal,
Right?
it was a while back.
to
you know?
signal. You went to sit to signal your
Dave Owen was
power.
a SLED 10 years ago.
No, I checked on that, because that night, the officer who was involved in that case in bringing clearly manufactured charges against Greg Alexander.
You're saying the night before you sat down for this interview, you were asking somebody about whether or not something about Greg Alexander 10 years ago in the wake of what had occurred?
Oh, no,
That's what
I didn't
you're
ask
talking-
anybody.
Okay, so that wasn't what you were discussing when you were sitting in this car.
No, I wasn't discussing that. I'm just telling you that I thought David Owen was the same agent that was involved in that case.
Then
Now,
walk out and don't talk to
I
him.
learned later, because I checked on it, I learned later that it was a different David, SLED agent, first name David with a different last name. I learned that later. I'm just saying that was all part of that process going on in my mind.
So you're saying that you're sitting here right now thinking that this Dave Owen and this circumstances and demeanor of this interview, you're thinking that guy had been involved in the prosecution or investigation of your friend 10 years ago?
I did.
Okay, so here's a new one you just mentioned to us, correct?
No, that's not a new one. That's part of,
I mean, the circumstances are new. I mean,
No,
that's fairly
no.
specific, don't you think?
No, Creighton, that's
Well,
what
no,
was in
sir.
his
I
mind.
mean, the story keeps evolving. Keep going. Keep
no,
going.
you asked me about this, Mr.
did.
Owen. What I said is part of this whole, I mean, Mr. Waters, part of this whole process involved my distrust for SLED. That was a big part of my distrust for SLED.
Yeah, we can all see it on your face in this interview, can't we?
I don't know.
But you said what you just said a little bit ago, that wasn't the lie, that wasn't the conscious decision yet, so let's keep going.
I don't think he
No,
made
I'm
a
not saying
conscious
that. I'm saying
decision
I
to lie.
don't believe that it was.
I
don't
think
know
he doesn't
exactly
know.
when I made the decision to lie about that.
I don't think he decided.
All right.
Well, if you see it,
I don't think it was a
okay.
conscious decision. I think it was just
To my mom
I think it was just his nature at this point.
for just a little while. Tried to call her when I left. Texted her, no response. When I got back to the house was, obviously nobody was in there, so I figured they're still up here fooling around. Paul was gonna be getting set up to plant. Our sunflower seeds got sprayed and died, and he was refiguring
He sure talked to
do-
Sled a lot.
plant the
He didn't
sunflower
have to.
seeds.
He didn't have to
So,
talk to them.
I came back up here.
He could have told one of the
and
lawyers there were a million
drove
of
up
them.
and saw
Go tell him this is what happened. He could have not talked to them at all.
and called.
He could have just said,
Had Maggie and Paul been arguing over anything?
No,
What was their relationship like?
wonderful,
Wonderful. How about yours and Maggie's?
wonderful. I mean, I'm sure we had little things here and there, but we had a wonderful marriage, wonderful relationship,
And yours and Paul's relationship?
as good as it could be.
How old was Paul?
22.
Okay.
So that was the moment, right there, that line of questioning, just asking some very general questions about your relationship. You mentioned that before, didn't you, Mr. Murdaugh? Is that the moment right there? Is that the look on your face when you decide to lie about an important fact in your wife and son's murder?
I don't know, as I said, Mr. Waters, I don't know the exact point that I made that decision.
You specifically earlier mentioned that very exchange as somehow triggering you to lie about the last time you saw them alive.
No, I'm not saying that that's what made me lie. I'm saying this whole set of circumstances caused me to be in a state where I had paranoid thoughts.
Okay.
That normally, Mr. Waters, I could take a deep breath and make go away in a second,
Interesting.
or 2 seconds, or 3 seconds at the most. And on this night, I wasn't able to do that. But all of those things
let him
that I
keep talking.
mentioned,
Stop
I
wandering,
believe
Creighton.
contributed to that.
Just let him stand still and let him talk.
Any more you want to add now, since you keep adding them?
Creighton, that's not a
Glad to answer any
question.
question you have.
Well, I mean, I'm asking you. I mean, the factors have gone from yesterday to today, and now, even after lunch, we got some new ones. So anything else you want to add right now as to factors?
Mr. Waters, I don't believe that I've added any new factors. I believe that's what I said yesterday.
All right.
If Creighton does not move on,
I've explained some of those factors because of your questions.
Just let him talk.
I don't believe I've added any factors.
they could say no question pending, but Creighton should just let him talk.
All right, let me move this forward just a little bit.
Just talk and talk.
Okay, so most of this was stuff from between a couple of them, but not.
You had talked about yesterday in great detail about the boat case, which you brought up on the 911 call and to Daniel Green, and then of course in this first interview, correct?
I did mention the boat wreck.
All right, and you described that. Do you remember what you said in this interview about the boat wreck?
Not
About
specifically.
specifically the other people involved in the boat wreck? You don't remember specifically? Do you remember specifically? I guess you said no.
I remember talking about the boat wreck, and I
Don't
know
know
that I talked about the boat wreck.
All right. Well, I'm gonna
Immediately
play it now
talked
from
about the boat wreck.
1714.
any direct threats between any of the people on the boat
Okay.
specifically, but I do think there's been a small amount of yap between a couple of them, but not recently.
Okay.
What was the term you used for that? A small amount of yip-yap?
Yeah, and just to be clear, Mr. Waters, there was never, ever a point in time where I thought that the people that were involved in the boat wreck did this to Paw and Maggie. I've never thought that.
All right. I never thought that, but it's literally one of the first things that you said out of the 911 call.
No, I think
No, that's
Creighton,
not what I said.
that's not what he means.
I never, ever, ever, under any point in time, believed that those kids that were riding in that boat, or their parents, or
their
their,
parents.
or their families, I didn't believe that any of the families, the people that were involved in the boat wreck, had anything to do with hurting Maggie
He
and
thought it
Paul.
was other people.
But I can tell you that at that time, and as I sit here today, that I believe that boat wreck is the
What?
reason why Paw and Maggie were killed.
Okay.
And I'm certain,
So
I
it
believe
was-
that.
It was random
I'm
vigilantes.
certain what?
The
Wait,
5C
Creighton,
vigilantes,
listen
so-
to him. No.
No, what I
Creighton,
believe, Mr. Waters, is I believe that
Listen to him and
when
let
Paul
him
was
finish.
charged criminally,
He's going to tell you what his motive
there were
is.
so many leaks, half-truths, half-reports, half-statements, partial information, misrepresentations of Paul that ended up in the media all the time. And when I tell you the social media response that came from that was vile, the things that were said about what they would do to Paul, they were so over the top that nobody would believe anybody would get on social media and do that. But I believe then, and I believe today,
Have you been on social media?
that the wrong person saw and read that.
Okay.
Because I can tell you for a fact that the person or people who did what I saw
Tell me for a fact.
on June the 7th, they hated Paul Murdaugh, and they had anger in their heart. And that is the only reason that somebody could be mad at Paul like that and hate him like that.
Gotcha. All right, so we've got now,
Creighton.
we've
But
got
that's why
the-
I did then believe it
Pause
was
and
the boat
listen.
wreck, and I believe now that the boat wreck
All right, so we've
had
got.
He
something
said
to do with it.
nothing
All right,
about
so
Maggie.
we've got random
Listen.
vigilantes because of the boat wreck.
Now, I don't know that they're random vigilantes.
Well, you just said it wasn't the family or the kid, or the
No.
the kids or the family of the other kids in the boat, right?
But
So
what-
you're saying it's somebody off of social media, and you don't have any evidence of that, do you?
Not
You
to-
just believe that, and you're just telling that jury that as you try to explain the lie that you told for the first time yesterday, isn't that right?
No, sir,
Nothing
that's
about
not
Maggie.
right.
It's not right. All right, well, let me ask you a question then. So what you're telling this jury is that it's a random vigilante,
That's
the
your term.
12-year-old 5'2" people that just happened to know that
Oh,
Paul and Maggie
shit.
were both at Moselle on June 7th, that knew that they would be at the kennels alone on June the 7th, that knew that you would not be there, but only between the times of 8:49 and 9:02, that they show up without a weapon, assuming that they're going to find weapons and ammunition there.
Objection,
That they commit this
compound.
crime during that short time window, and then they travel the same exact route that you do around the same time to Alameda.
Objection compound.
That's what you're trying to tell this jury?
You got a lot of
That was me.
factors in there, Mr. Waters, all of which I do not agree with, but some of which I do.
I wanted to see his lawyers.
This jury?
I wanted to
You
see
got
his
a lot of
lawyers.
factors in there, Mr. Waters, all of which I do not agree with, but some of which I do.
Huh. All of which I do not agree with, but some of which I do. If Creighton loses his cool, he loses this battle with Alec. And that's my concern with Creighton. If Creighton loses his cool, he has lost to the Battle of Wills. But he should have paused, I think, when Alec was saying, and almost it seemed to say, I'm certain that they hated Paul to
testified.
do this. Why?
Earlier that after this happened, well, let me back up just real quick. When you were driving to and from Alameda, why were you in such a hurry?
I wasn't.
Why are you rolling 70, 80 miles an hour down that dark, beat-up road?
I wasn't in such a hurry.
You weren't?
No, sir.
All right.
Yep. He said nothing about Maggie. I don't know what he's showing Jim and Poot. We'll see in a minute.
Show you what's been marked as States 573. See if you recognize this.
I do.
And tell the jury what that is.
I want you to ask the next question I would ask
What's it in front of?
because I have
House at
questions.
Moselle.
And what's between the house and the Mercedes?
The golf cart.
Is that where it was on June the 8th?
I want to see it. Wait,
No, sir.
can we see it?
Where was it left?
I mean, it was near there, but that's not exactly where it was. No, sir.
Okay,
Who
where
moved
was
it?
it?
Where we would normally park it would be a little bit closer to the sheds. I mean, a little bit closer to the house, to the bushes.
When
Your
did
Honor,
you
this-
move it?
When was that photograph taken?
Well, do you recognize when it was taken?
No, I don't recognize. No,
You
sir.
wouldn't dispute that it was around the time in the aftermath of the murders, would you?
Aftermath being when?
I'm asking you.
A day, a week, an hour?
I wasn't there, Mr. Murdaugh. Do you recognize that?
I recognize the car, I recognize the house, and I recognize the golf cart. But that is not, that's not exactly how it would have been
All right.
that night.
How it would have been or how it
Can you describe to me
was?
then where it would be different?
Well, it would be more in line with, first things first is, when we drove the golf cart, or when I drove it for sure, and I believe when the others drove it, you would come in and you would go across the little brick walkway that's in front of this. So if I would have come in and gone this way, or I would have come in and gone this way. This is not a place that any of my family would have normally parked.
So-
And so what I'm assuming is, this obviously is taken at daytime. And what I'm assuming is it was taken when SLED came the earliest it was taken was when Sled came to the house the next day, which I believe the testimony is in the afternoon. And at this point in time, that golf cart, I would assume, would have been moved several times, but that's not how it was.
Well, where did you
When?
leave the golf cart?
When would it get moved when they were investigating a murder
In
on
the
your
manner in
property?
which I just talked about.
Okay, well, help me out again, so I understand. You would have come around this way or that way, but where would it end
It would have
up?
been, in this picture, it's facing to the right.
Oh, I got you.
The night that I drove it, I believe I parked it facing to the left.
I understand.
Would be customarily how I did it.
Sir.
And I believe I did it that way that night.
Okay. Well, all right.
And that is how I would have gotten into it.
All right. That's a very specific memory. Thank you. All right. At this
Well, that's
time, the
just how it
state would
normally
offer state's 5.
Creighton, stop with the commentary. Hi, hon.
Admit it without objection.
Oh, no, very briefly.
And see, Mr. Waters, you can see in the picture now that you bring this up on the screen, if you look to the right, you can see the actual steps. And just to the left of that would be where the little brick patio starts. So
Okay.
where I would normally park it, you would roll across those bricks and the end of the golf cart would be just past those.
So who moved the golf cart? Well,
And we all normally parked it that way because the way you charge this golf cart is if you see that back seat that's sitting, you can see the edge. This is a 3-seat golf cart, and you can see the back seat. And a lot of golf carts have the charger that sits on the floor or something. This golf cart has a charger that's plugged in and a part of the golf cart. So you flip that seat up and it plugs in.
but
And
when?
the- And the outlets are right
You
up
drove
there
to
by
the
door.
kennels in the Chevy Suburban. You called 911.
Anything
You
else
got
you
a
want to say about
gun. Law enforcement showed up.
I'm
The
going to
whole
answer
law
any
enforcement
questions
showed
you
up.
have, Mr. Waters.
Everyone showed up.
Appreciate all that information in great detail.
When did it get moved? Who moved it? Sled didn't.
Sustained.
It is. The commentary is ridiculous. Sled didn't move it. Did his friends move it? Who was driving it back and forth? Because when law enforcement was
It's just
there,
never parked that way
y'all left and went to stay at your mom's house.
by the family.
So who moved it? And when was the picture taken? Because I don't think Creighton said that either. Did the lawyers go driving it around that night? Did they wipe it down while they were driving it around? Now I have more questions about the golf cart that I don't think are going to get answered. And is law enforcement just letting people drive the golf cart around?
This would have been June the 10th. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I do want to go through a couple of things with you, okay?
Anything you want to go through, Mr. Waters?
Jenny Ann said, I can't stop yelling at the screen. I mean, obviously, same. Because as we were getting into the moment where Alec was saying whoever did this to Paul had hated Pawpaw and had, you know, whatever in their heart, there was more there, and he just moved on. And I was like,
I apologize, got ahead of myself. I want to do one last thing on the first one.
made me want to scream the goat. Yeah, go ahead and end the poll, Miguelina. We are less than 100 subs away from 700,000. So there we go with that. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Just keeping you in the loop. But there was that moment where we were hearing the inner workings of whoever did this, because we heard Maggie's sister say, Alec told them whoever did this must have been thinking about it for a long time. And now we're hearing again, whoever did this. And then Creighton brings a snark of like vigilante 12-year-olds, and it's like, you're missing the point, Creighton. He's saying whoever must have did this thought this and this
For
and
the
this.
record, I'm gonna start-
And I know for a certainty, and you cut him
Starting at
off.
23:55. This is
That's
the first
when he should have let him
interview.
talk.
Maggie's been having trouble with her. She's been having trouble with her stomach and her tooth. I'm not positive. It was sort of a routine visit, and I can't remember. She told me the name of him, and I can't. I want to say Gordine is who I think she saw.
When he was saying we drove
So
the golf
was she
cart,
back
I heard
home
him
around
talking about
supper time?
the family. Like that's how
Or-
we used it.
Or
What is
6 o'clock, 7 o'clock?
what in the clusterfuck is happening? Can you
I
maximize
don't
your
think
screen,
she got
please?
back quite that early. I think she got back a little bit later than that.
Okay.
Nope. Creighton. Also,
What did you do today?
Thanks,
Were you in the
all.
office or?
No,
I
was
appreciate
home.
you.
I came home, Paul and I messed around. I was up at the house. I laid down, took a nap on the couch, probably, I don't know, 25, 30 minutes. I got up, I called Maggie, didn't get an answer, and I left to go to my mom's. She had said she might ride with me, but she normally doesn't when I go over there. And I think I texted her.
There, when you repeated the lie? That you
Creighton, this
decided-
is not the flex you think it is, dude. Move on. You missed the moment
that
that was the
moment?
moment.
Is that the moment you
Decided
decided to lie to mean old Dave Owen?
I don't know. As I told you, Mr. Waters, the exact moment that I decided to
You
lie.
missed the
But
moment.
At that point in time,
But you did lie
Obviously.
there, correct?
I did.
And she's very good about answering the phone, so that was odd, or calling me back. So that was odd, but it wasn't that big a deal.
Okay, Creighton. I know. I think
All right,
he
I'm gonna go to the
missed
second interview. It's been previously admitted.
the forest for the trees, but we'll see what happens from there. Are we doing another interview?
Let me ask you this before we start. You stated earlier during your direct testimony that after these crimes happened, you were around family, family was around you, your law partners were around you pretty much every minute after that, correct? Every waking minute. Didn't you say that yesterday?
Yes,
Give him a second
It
to
worked
answer,
for
Creighton. Just breathe.
a long
It's fine.
time.
Just breathe.
And this second interview was 3 days later, is that right?
that's correct.
And in no time with any of your close friends and law partners and family, do you confess the truth? Do you?
No, I did not.
Do you say, hey man, I think I messed up. What should I do about this?
Asked and answered.
No, I didn't.
You're not telling that lie to anyone, are you? Until yesterday.
Excuse me?
You're
Creighton.
not telling that lie to anyone until yesterday, are you?
Not telling what lie?
The same lie that Creighton wants you to say that you're telling.
Saying I tried to tell somebody that I was lying?
All right.
Creighton, just pause. He'll fill in the space. He's going back to the video. Why are we going back to the video?
So is it?
Y'all, we binged. Thank you, law nerds.
And
All right, I'm going to move this to approximately
We binged.
24:56.
We'll celebrate at the break. Yay. Now, if Creighton will find a point, the point that's actually the point, it'll be great. It would just be great. Because we missed the point that was the point.
red thing getting.
Him explaining why somebody would have done this to Paul was the
him-
moment.
He doesn't like to go to doctors, making him
That
go
was
get his
it.
blood pressure checked. His feet had swollen up recently.
Wow.
So, you know, that was, it was a big, huge deal.
Okay.
You know, we hung around the house
This
for
is
a
the
little
second
while.
time he interviewed with David
I know
Owen.
that Maggie
This
went
one's
to
the second
kennels.
one.
I don't know exactly where Paul went, but he left the house too.
Okay.
It is.
How did Maggie get down to the kennels?
I don't know exactly. But on normal occasions, she would drive a buggy, drive a four-wheeler, or very common for her to walk.
Okay.
By buggy, does he mean the
How about Paul?
golf cart?
Paul wasn't much of a walker, but he would use all of the others.
Okay.
But I mean, it could be anyway, you know? I don't know exactly. I wish I could help you with that.
So they left and went down to the kennels.
Well, Maggie went to go to the kennels,
Okay. Paul left.
and I'm assuming.
Thank you, Christina, for
I'm
the super
assuming Paul
sticker.
left
Okay.
because of, you know,
Gotcha.
what happened. I mean, I'm assuming Paul
Yeah.
went to the kennels.
Okay. And what did you do once Maggie and Paul left?
I stayed in the house,
Okay.
and I was watching TV, looking at my phone, and I actually fell asleep.
Yes,
on
Liv,
the
this is the
couch.
first time Creighton Waters has gotten to speak with Alec, and he's going to keep
What
speaking.
time did you?
You know, I
What
don't
time did
know
you wake up?
exactly what time I woke up, but when y'all get my phone, you know, I think one of the first things I did
When
when
y'all
I got
get my
up was
phone.
call Maggie
Mm-hmm.
because I was going to my mom's. And I know I texted her because I checked my phone. And what time did we say the text was, Jim? It's like 9:06.
I didn't see it. Yeah, I got it written down for you.
I showed you the other night,
yes,
didn't I?
yes, sir. I got this.
So,
I showed you,
know,
though.
I texted her, so I called her just before that. And I mean,
Thank you,
she
Melissa
didn't
S.
answer at that point. And I left to go to my mom's.
Okay.
Y'all will just have to look. I'm not sure if I called Paul. or
Well,
not.
and that's why we're getting the phone so we can nail down the times and
Right.
and everything.
Pretty much all of that was lies, wasn't it?
The part about me not being at the kennel was a
Well,
lie.
also not knowing that Paul went down there, not being sure, that was a lie too, wasn't it? I mean, you're putting some detail on this thing, aren't you?
Not knowing when Paul left. Everything about me not going to the kennel was a lie.
And you're able to just do that
Max-
Oh,
so
thanks, Miss
easily,
Hogue.
so convincingly,
Good to see you.
so naturally, don't you?
Oh, Creighton, so dramatic.
That's not for me to judge.
That's true.
Good God, Creighton. The commentary back and forth with him and the defendant. On cross, you are supposed to ask questions. So when he's like, that's not for me to judge, and Creighton's like, that's true. If he had done that more than once in most courtrooms where I'd practiced, the court would have admonished him in front of the jury and said, counsel, that's not a question. It's both sides have done it, but Creighton's done it a lot in this cross. And the jury is hearing from the defense that this is an over prosecution. And Creighton is giving, let's reach with a lot of these things. So if the jury's already leaning out from Creighton's theory of the case into the defense's theories of the case, this is playing right into it. And there are moments in this that have been good that he has, I don't think, caught because he's
quick and
trying to get into his story.
That's going to tell us something.
By evidence, I mean, is it things you think are going to be helpful?
Well, I mean, like the shot shells out there, the casings,
They might not.
the DNA swabs that we took from the door handle to see if anybody touched the door handles, any other places that we think somebody may have touched while they were out there. We're trying to collect DNA from that and analyze that. Which at the conclusion of this, what I'm going to also ask is that we get a buccal swab, a DNA swab from you.
No problem.
Your DNA is going to be there, but we need to eliminate it once it's developed.
We don't need
so-
that unknown
yeah.
when it actually is a family member.
There's no problem.
Jan, he
I mean,
said
we-
he touched them. That's why the
we
lack
were
of blood
taught
is
to-
concerning. It doesn't match his story.
Close to 100 people trying to track people down, and we're still tracking people down. And that's why, who Paul was with.
I want to tell you one thing while I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Paul was really an
Get to that in a
incredibly
second.
intuitive little dude. And
Thank you,
I mean,
Amy.
he was like a little detective. And
He was like a little detective.
And here's what I said.
What do you mean by that?
And he was very intuitive, like I said.
And that
Was
was
he afraid?
what Marion described as Maggie's term for how he was and keeping tabs on your pill usage. Wasn't that correct?
That was what Maggie said about
Was
him.
he afraid of
For
the
some reason,
threats?
you decided to bring that up in this interview.
He was still going out.
I mean, that was a trait of Paul's personality. I mean, I think anybody who knew him would tell you how intuitive he was.
It's possible they all went in the golf cart to get down there. It definitely is. He's still saying they didn't all go to the kennels together. But we'll see.
I went through hours of videos that we.
All right, for the record, I'm at 4630.
Jeannie, I think it goes both ways. If the jury doesn't like Alec, they want to see an aggressive cross.
So.
But if it feels heavy-handed, it can
Mr.
feel
Allen,
You don't have to
heavy-handed.
call me miss, you just call me Alec, thank you.
There's
for
times
that
it feels heavy-handed to me.
When you and Paul got back to the house, Miss Maggie's there, and y'all eat supper, which has been prepared. And you said you laid down and took a little nap, and when you got up, Maggie and Paul was gone, or did they leave when you laid down?
I believe that I'm not sure.
But they weren't there when you woke up around the 9 o'clock mark or so when you made the call to Maggie to let her know you were going to.
No, nobody was in that house when I left.
So, and just trying to narrow down, the last time that Paul and you saw
Thank you,
Paul and
guys.
Maggie when y'all were eating supper.
Yes, sir.
So,
I'm going to answer questions at the
The
break.
answer was yes, sir. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you think Waters will call Cousin Eddie before closing? I don't know. Ask me again at the end of the defense case. I don't know. What's in his shirt pocket? Didn't the inside of the pocket test positive, indicating blood? It did. I don't know what was inside the shirt pocket, but it did. But then again, the confirmatory test all said no blood. So I'm going to answer questions as we go. Do you think Connor will take the stand for the prosecution? Maybe in rebuttal? Maybe? I don't know. It feels far afield. Have they considered AM could have hidden murder weapons at his parents? Yes, they have. We heard testimony from Miss Shelley that they're going to argue about that, I imagine. And we heard about the raincoat / tarp that had GSR all in the side of it. But they didn't consider it until September. Regarding the roadside incident, I think he lied about wanting to die. He planned for a minor injury and major sympathy. Maybe. And I think that's a reasonable interpretation of it. I think both. Do you think Poot just brought in that folder? What do you think Poot just brought in that folder? I didn't see him. But they've got their expert witnesses getting ready to testify, so probably that.
About to go to the August 2021 interview, but between
This is playing at
that
the car
June
wash
10th interview
my friend
and
was
the
stuck at in
August
South Carolina.
interview,
I'm sure it is.
you were not working very much, is that correct?
We'll get to that in a minute.
If at all?
No, I definitely wasn't working very much. I think I was working a little bit, but no, not very much at all.
Did you go to Johnny Parker to borrow $250,000 in order to cover the Ferris fees?
I did.
You did?
I did.
Did you tell him what that was for?
No, I did not tell him what that was for.
Did you go to Russell Lafitte at Palmetto State Bank and get $350,000 in order to help cover some of the Ferris fees that you had taken to send to Chris Wilson?
I did.
And did you get those fees before you signed any paperwork or documentation?
I've heard testimony about that in this case, but I can't tell you the specifics of that.
Okay. You don't recall that?
Do I recall when I signed paperwork? No, sir.
You don't recall that you got the money a month before you had to sign any paperwork?
No, sir, I don't recall that.
recall your phone being in the console, which
I'm
you
not
recall.
disputing that, but I don't recall it.
Did you go to your best friend Chris Wilson and convince him to cover $192,000, the remaining $192,000, in order for him to send that email to your law firm as if those fees had been there all along?
I spoke to Chris Wilson and did not have the full amount of the fees, and I got Chris Wilson to put the remaining fees in his trust account.
And when you did that, you didn't tell him the truth about your life. You just asked him to cover you,
No, I
correct?
didn't. I did not tell him.
And he agreed to do that because of his belief of who you really were, or who he thought you were.
He agreed to do that for whatever reasons. I assume that was a big part of it.
Thank you all for the
Once that
congratulations.
$600,000 was transferred, Chris Wilson sent an email to you saying those fees had been there, were in his trust account, correct?
That is correct.
And then you forwarded that email to Lee Cope and Jeannie Seconder, correct?
I know I forwarded it to Jeannie, and I've heard that testimony about forwarding it to Lee Cope, so I believe that's correct.
They did search the waterways on the property. I don't know if they searched all of them. Thank you all for the congratulations. I'm going to try to answer some questions. The prosecution keeps taking breaks.
Why'd you not get it all from PSB?
Because at that time, there were limitations on how much I could borrow
Because he was maxed out, Creighton.
because Mags
Better to hear him say it.
was passed. And so I was limited.
That's helpful for the
couldn't get
defense's argument.
A loan against
Couldn't get a loan because Maggie had
Moselle and
passed.
had to get a loan against Palmetto State. I mean, against Edisto.
Making it harder for him to get money after Maggie was gone is what the defense has been arguing.
Going to the third interview.
Oh, boy. They're definitely not going to do that. What grade are you giving Creighton so far? He's got moments. And then he's got moments.
I'm going to go to
Creighton could improve his active
1745.
listening skills. He's wanting to go through everything he wants to go through, but he's not listening to the answers. Chevy says this cross is going into Monday. I sure hope not. Can you give me a work note? Yes. Shout outs to you and the mods for your hard work. Yes, you're on jury duty. Thank you, Jess, for the super chats. Do you think they will choose to redirect?
Apparently
I
having
don't
some
know.
Technical difficulties.
With the Snapchat evidence, I believe that the little detective, Paul, may have been responsible for solving his own murder. It's a very fair point. I don't think Alec would have been charged if that Snapchat video hadn't been there at all. For sure.
Jury's seen this, so, I mean, again, you repeated the same lies over and over again,
I did.
Thank God.
effortlessly and convincingly.
I
Elysian
don't know
said,
about that.
I wanted
No.
to say hi to my mom. Hi,
They
Karen.
can see it there.
Agree with that.
Nobody
Karen.
yelled at you.
Nobody yelled at me. Nobody, none of these guys were ever discourteous to me. Like,
Fair.
Nobody what?
I said, none of those guys were ever discourteous to me.
They weren't.
You made a comment earlier that David Owens was mean or something about being mean, and he was never mean to me.
He was being facetious, Alec. He said big, mean old David Owen is what he said. He was being sarcastic.
But you decided to lie in part because you distrusted David Owen.
I distrusted SLED in general, and I particularly distrusted who I thought was David Owen at the time.
Okay.
Then get out of the
It
car
turned
and
out not
talk
to be
him.
David Owen.
So, wait a minute, I want to be clear. You're saying now you thought that this was some David Owen that had something to do with Greg Alexander 10 years ago.
He already said that if you were
And
listening,
I'm not
Creighton.
saying that now. I said that all along.
I am
The
talking
person
and reading
that
and streaming, and I caught
and
that.
watched in Greg Alexander's trial that was clear to me was just, it was terrible what they did to Greg Alexander. And the person at SLED who was responsible for that was a guy named David. all right, and I'm not even getting to his last name. I thought that David Owens that night was that guy. Later, down the road,
Creighton, he already said this.
and it was a while, I checked into that, and I found out that I was mistaken, that it was not David Owen. It was
So
a
when we went
different
back
guy.
and we spent a lot of time going through that first statement, you're telling me now that you were sitting there thinking that this was a completely different guy the whole time, and
He
that was on
told
your
you that
mind
10 minutes
during
ago.
the entire interview.
No.
Yes,
Creighton.
at the time, I thought that David
Creighton!
Owen, no, I didn't think David Owen was a different person. I thought that David Owens was the person that my dad and I had watched. Just, I mean, my dad and I truly thought evidence was
Yeah, you said that
manufactured,
part.
and I thought it was David Owen, and I was wrong about that. But that's what I thought that night.
Right. And he said that like 15 minutes
factors
ago.
or details you want to add about your decision?
I'm going to answer any question you have,
No,
Mr.
no, I mean,
Waters.
let's, any more?
Do you have any more questions?
No, I mean, any more about your decision to lie. I mean, I just want to, let's
Oh
get
my
it all
God,
out now.
Creighton. Please stop.
If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
All right, well, I do.
Please stop on the deciding to lie, Creighton. Do you not know humans?
Tell me about the replacement blackout. You initially told law enforcement that you weren't sure whether or not there was one, correct?
Oh, no, sir, you're absolutely wrong about that.
What did you say then?
Shortly after this, it became being told that Paul's gun had been stolen. And the one you heard talk about being stolen from the thing. And I'm not sure how I learned this, but I learned that somebody, I believe SLED had gone to John Bedingfield, who made those guns, and could only find paperwork for 2 blackouts, one
he
of which
didn't-
they were saying was stolen in 17.
He didn't fill out the paperwork.
And
for the
that's what
third
they were
one.
telling me. And I was certain, and told them that I was certain that there was a third one.
But initially,
Why didn't John Bedingfield do the paperwork for it?
June 8th or June 10th, you were saying that you thought that y'all had replaced it, and then you kind of wavered, and then eventually said you did replace it, correct?
I don't believe that's correct, no,
You
sir.
don't believe that's correct?
No, I don't believe that's
Did you
correct.
say to law enforcement that you thought that this third gun, the replacement blackout, had gone missing in Christmas of 2020?
Creighton, if he said that, just
It
play
did go
it.
missing in Christmas of 2020.
So you're telling them that one also had been missing 6 months prior, correct? Answer my question first, and then you can explain. Did you all tell law enforcement that that gun had been missing since Christmas time?
I told law enforcement that when we looked for it at Christmas time, we could not find it.
Okay.
And that was accurate. We looked for it when we were trying to shoot hogs, when we had a group of people out there, and we could not find it.
Okay. But you now know that it was there as late as turkey season.
I know, sir. I know that Will Love and Paw Paw had it right before turkey season, like Will Love testified to.
But that's not
So
December.
it was around, actually.
It was around there at some point in time there, yes, sir.
So you're saying it got stolen a second time, or you just don't know?
No, I'm not.
The 12-year-old stole it a second time?
If you know, you know.
I never said a 12-year-old stole any gun, Mr.
Sorry, the
Waters.
five-
Yeah,
two
Mr.
people
Waters,
stole it
you're
the
the one
second
being snarky about that.
I don't
Creighton.
know that it was stolen. I just know that when we looked for it at Christmas time, we couldn't find it. And I know this, I know that I hadn't seen that gun
Paul could have left it at
in a
somebody's
long
house.
time. I've heard the testimony that people who were at my house using guns and hunting with us all the time, Rogan, Buster, they didn't, I can't remember about
gonna
Buster,
blame
but there were
Roro
several
for
people
having the
who
gun
didn't even know
now?
that gun had been replaced. So that tells me that that gun did not stay where our regular guns were. And I know that I didn't see it there, and that tells me that they didn't see it there.
Of course you didn't see it there, because it's got to be missing, right, Mr. Murdaugh?
Because it's got to be missing.
Ask that
Yeah,
question
one more
again.
circumstance for your latest story to work is that it's got to be missing as well. It was when you told law enforcement it was missing at Christmas time. Now, we've had testimony at this trial, and now you're still claiming that you never saw it. It must have been kept somewhere else. Where else would it have been kept?
it could have been kept anywhere, Mr. Waters, the way Paul did guns, the way guns were handled around there. I was terrible about that.
You're terrible.
Uh-huh.
I should have been stricter.
Nemo
But you
Tutu.
know that third gun
I don't think
was
there is
fired
any
right
good end for this
outside
case, honestly.
the
Paul and
gun room
Maggie are
door
killed.
in turkey season of 2021.
He tore
correct?
down his law firm. I
I
don't
know
think
that
there is
now,
any good result.
based on what Will Lovin said.
And you know,
Truly.
it was also fired
It's all
across the
just a
street at
mess.
y'all's shooting house around that same time, don't you?
No, sir, I don't know that, but I know that I would assume that it was fired at the shooting range, but I have I don't have any reason to believe it was done in close proximity to that time.
Could have been any time, and that's fair, Creighton. It could have been any time. But the ones near the house weren't at any time because you have testimony from Will Loving that it wasn't. You guys, do you think 700,000 subscribers is enough to convince Ruffles to sell all dress chips in the U.S.? Just a question. Emily, have you ever had to cross-examine another lawyer? No.
A few months go by,
I've had lawyers that
Couple
were
months
very
go
difficult
by.
victims, though.
and you get confronted about
Yes.
your
All right,
thefts
we're gonna work on it.
from the law firm, correct?
September of 21.
And unlike June the 7th, when Jeannie confronted you, this time they had unassailable evidence, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, they had,
No wiggling out of this one, correct?
I didn't try to wiggle out of this one.
Well, you've been wiggling before, though, right? You wiggled when you stole your brother's money twice, correct?
Yep.
I admit almost all of these things, Mr. Waters, but that's one of the things that I take
Almost
dispute
all.
with,
Which one?
The stealing from his
that I
brother.
stole that money that you're referring to.
You're going to dispute that? Let's hear about that then. Tell me why you dispute cashing
Let's hear about that
that
then.
check
Great.
twice.
I
I
don't
have
dispute
snaps.
cashing that check twice.
But you're going to tell this jury that you accidentally didn't realize that you were supposed to
So
be
what are you
receiving
disputing?
some $125,000 check,
He,
$120 however $1,000 check, 2 times.
What
How
I'm
many
telling you,
$120,000 checks do you receive?
I got that check, and this is several months after. I mean, you can look at my finances and you can see how I was doing. I didn't balance a checkbook. But the fact of the
which
matter is,
again
when I
is
got
giving
that check,
ADHD, honestly.
I asked about it,
Like, come on.
and I was told mistakenly that it was for me, that I had done, participated in that year-end thing, which I did sometimes, not often, but sometimes.
I can't celebrate
Apparently, a
yet.
new check got cashed. I cashed that check.
I have a
Then a
TV
year
appearance
later,
tonight. Can't drink yet.
Where did you keep that one for a year?
I don't know where it was. It was obviously in my desk, but Mr. Waters,
So you found it in your desk.
no, I didn't find it.
Well, you say it was obviously in your desk. So you remember that? You remember finding it in your desk?
No, I remember when we,
Did you go to finance and say, I just found this year-old
No,
check?
no, he
Is this
didn't.
right?
No, he didn't. No, he didn't.
No.
He cashed
No, you
it.
took it to the bank.
No, he
didn't you?
cashed it.
No, sir.
He cashed it.
I didn't.
Not allowing Mr. Murdaugh to answer the question.
That's part
So
of the
when this
paying
came
across.
up-
Hey, let the judge answer, Alec.
When this came up, that check got cashed. There's no way that I can have a check in our law firm with the way accounting is, and that I can cash a check twice and think that's impossible. So to cash a check that's already been checked, there's no question it's gonna throw that off. What happened is, we used to get a rent check, we get little checks, I'd have checks, and they pile up, the small checks. That check got mixed in, and it got
The small
sent
checks.
to the bank.
He's talking
And
about
it got
$100,000,
deposited.
y'all. The small checks. The small checks.
Keep going.
And that was a year
Keep
after.
explaining the small checks to me. I don't understand.
But I do dispute that I stole that money. That money.
That wasn't stolen?
All right?
That was
Well,
just a
You
mistake?
brought it up, so any of the other money you dispute sealing?
No, sir, you brought it up. I was just telling you that that was the one I disputed.
Fact. That's a fact.
All right.
He's right on that,
You heard
Creighton.
Ronnie Crosby and Mark Ball testify about that, correct?
I heard Ronnie and Mark testify about what they thought about it. Yes, sir.
I know, chat, right? We'll take the small checks. Can I have a small check, please? Wow. It was, no, I think what Alec was saying is that he
Testified
wasn't
yesterday
keeping
about
track of
side
the
of the
little
road.
checks, the $100,000 checks, you know, the little bits of money. He wasn't keeping
Yeah,
track
yes,
of that.
sir.
And then you heard the testimony during the state's direct case about what you said on the 911 call? You heard that, didn't you?
I did hear that.
You heard the 911 call where you said you'd been attacked by an unknown assailant and described him?
I did.
And you saw the video from the ambulance where you said you'd been attacked by an unknown assailant and described him?
I did.
And you heard the testimony from Ryan Kelly where you, again, went in detail and described this attack from an unknown assailant?
I did.
And you heard the testimony about your interview on September 6th with law enforcement, in which you went into great detail and again described this unknown assailant?
I did.
And you heard the testimony, and in fact, the image was put in about how you sat down
I'm
with
gonna send Bailey
sled
all
sketch
dressed
artist
chips so she can get hooked on them too.
and spent
Join
a period of
forces.
time with her going forward and creating an image of the supposed assailant.
I did sit down with I was in the hospital and they came in, sat down with me, asked me a bunch of questions. I answered their questions and
Yes, you did. You
it
sat
came
there,
came up with a composite.
Creighton, let
Yes,
him
sir.
answer.
sat there and answered their questions
You don't have
just as
control of this witness already.
effortlessly and convincingly as you've been trying to do for the past 2 days. Isn't that correct?
No, sir, that's not true. In that hospital.
That's not true?
I couldn't sit still. I was standing up. I was walking around. I was using the bathroom with the lady sitting right there. I was, I
What?
was 2 days into not taking, 3 days into not taking pills like I had been. So, no, it wasn't effortlessly. But I told him what I told him. I don't dispute that I lied.
It was all lies, though, is the point, correct?
It was.
I mean, you're saying withdrawals, but you still were able to pull off lies in great detail.
I lied to them.
We've heard Alec described in this trial as cunning. Are you texting
And the lie
Waters
that
during
you
this trial?
told-
No.
Of an unknown assailant was to try to make people
His team's
think.
passing him notes. I just wish they would have slowed him
real
down earlier.
bad guys, we're back again to finish the job. Isn't that true?
No, sir, that's not true.
That's not the effect that you intended that story to have? Did it have that effect on people that you knew?
Calls for speculation.
Isn't that the exact effect that it had?
Creighton, you have
don't-
to let
I
him
don't-
answer.
I don't
Stop
think there's many
asking
people
more
that believe that.
questions.
No, sir. I know the people that were, the people that were closest to me didn't believe that. So, no,
When
sir.
accountability is at your door, Mr. Murdaugh, bad things happen.
That was his point. He
Isn't that
wanted to
true?
ask that question.
When accountability is
Half
at my
your life-
doorstep,
Go ahead.
bad things happen. What do you mean by bad things?
What do you mean by accountability? Should have been the
June
question.
7th happened, September 4th happened.
I don't believe that June is a man to help me kill myself because issues were at my doorstep.
Every time, or I'm sorry, for the first time in your life of privilege and prominence and wealth,
Oh,
when you were facing accountability, each time suddenly you became a victim and everyone ran to your aid. Isn't
and
that
now
true?
sit down.
I disagree with that, but
And now sit down.
I mean, what you're.
Shame for
you're-
you is an
you're in-
extraordinary provocation. Isn't that true, Mr. Murdaugh?
Hang on, let me just finish this. You seem to be implying 2 dates, June the 7th and September.
He wants to
and
explain
talking
now,
about
Creighton.
accountability issues. And, I mean, to me, those two things are totally different. There were no accountability issues on my doorstep on June the 7th.
That's what you say,
And in September,
not what other people say.
I was trying to, well, no, I mean, been a lot of people, well, in September, that wasn't designed to gain me sympathy. That was designed for me not to be here because I didn't want my son to have to deal with the wake of the things that I had done.
But that's not the story you told. The story that came out of your mouth right away was the story of you getting attacked by some unknown assailant while you were trying to change a tire and run flats.
Well,
That's the story that you told.
That is the story I told, but that's because the man who shot me did not shoot me that day
Well-
as I intended. And I had to have a story as to how I got shot, so I lied.
So you lied. And you're saying that people in your family and your friends didn't instantly believe that whoever these 12-year-old marauders were back to finish the job.
You keep using
And
the
it
term
happened just
12-year-old
2 hours
marauders.
after you'd been confronted by Chris Wilson.
I think probably some people may have thought that when it first happened, but
That
I
was the
think
testimony.
Randy, Ronnie, Mark, those guys, I think they knew very quickly that
Some thought you tried to take yourself
this was
out.
not,
Some thought you had been attacked.
I think they knew this was something that I'd done.
And there was testimony to that too, Creighton. I agree. He has to stop with the 12-year-olds. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
Shame for you, I asked this before, but shame for you is an extraordinary provocation, isn't it, Mr. Murdaugh?
Shame for me is an extraordinary provocation. I don't like to be shamed.
The prospect of humiliating the legacy is an extraordinary provocation to you, isn't it, Mr. Murdaugh?
This should be his last line
What do
of
you mean by
questioning.
an extraordinary provocation?
It affects you deeply. It's your biggest concern, is it not?
No, that's not my biggest concern.
You're a middle-aged man like me?
I'm 54 years old. I'm not sure. You look like you're in better shape than me, so I don't know.
We all
I was
old
actually
here,
a couple of
Creighton.
years behind you in law school, but we never knew each other, did we?
I never knew you, no, sir.
Interesting. What does
Had a
that
very successful career
have to do with anything, Creighton?
up until this point.
Creighton,
You
you
know-
asked this
Simple question.
yesterday.
And the answer to that is no, Mr. Waters. I was an addict for more than 20 years.
All right, so making millions of dollars over a decade is not having a successful career? Is that what you're going to tell the jury?
No, that's not a successful career. When you
Okay, well, let me put it
now,
like
hang
this.
on. Let me just.
All right,
you
go
put
ahead.
this-
I love Alec. No, hang on.
You know,
You're the
it may
defendant in
have
the murder
been
trial.
what you perceive
And
as a
Creighton's like,
successful
"Aight."
career, but you know, I was the one who was fighting that.
You asked this yesterday,
You
Creighton.
don't have a very high self-esteem
Uh-oh.
when you're an addict. So I don't deem myself a success.
All right. Would you agree that at least outwardly you're perceived as successful?
No, Creighton. Listen to him talk about the self-esteem, Creighton. Listen to the self-esteem comment,
I made
not the success.
I made a bunch of money, if that's what you're wanting to get at.
No, I'm actually asking about the perception. You were perceived as a prominent,
I tried to be.
powerful lawyer.
How I was perceived,
president
I
of
don't
the
know.
trial lawyers.
I sure tried to be.
Follow up on that. I sure tried to be. What else were you trying to be?
lived a life of possessing authority.
Possessing authority?
Yeah, we saw the badges. You just admitted of your prominence in the legal community.
I don't think that I lived a life of possessing authority. I never saw myself as that way.
You had lights on your car.
You don't think you lived a life of privilege?
I think I was very privileged.
And as we move to June of 2021, you were suffering from a drug addiction.
He was suffering a drug addiction
Absolutely.
longer than that, Creighton.
Your father was terminally ill.
When?
As we move to June of 2021,
No, sir.
he was very ill.
He was very ill.
And you were coming to a point
Right. And if Creighton keeps
of
badgering
financial
him,
crisis.
it's the jury may be also feeling sorry for him at this point.
I was having financial issues like I'd had many times in the past.
Mr. Murdaugh,
He's not
are
gonna
you a
ask that.
family annihilator?
Whoa!
A family annihilator?
Whoa! He asked it.
You mean like, did I shoot my wife and my son?
Yes.
No.
He must
Would
be at the end of
never
cross.
hurt Maggie Murdoch. I would never hurt Paul Murdoch under any circumstances.
Wait, that wasn't your last question? How is that not your last question? How is that not your last question?
Excuse me?
You say that, but you lied to Maggie, didn't you?
I did lie to Maggie
You lied to Paul.
sometimes.
You lied to your father.
I'm sure I did at some point.
Did you tell him all the stuff you'd been up to over the years before he died?
No, I didn't tell him.
Did you lie to your brothers?
I still
About
can't believe he asked
financial
that.
things.
Yes.
I would have lied to Randy at some point, I'm sure.
Did you lie to him about the last time you saw your wife and son alive?
I did.
Did you lie to their wives?
Yep.
I'm sure I did.
Did you lie to Marion Proctor?
Yes.
Did you lie to Bart Proctor?
Yes.
Did you lie to the Brandstetters?
Yes.
Did you lie to your best friend Chris Wilson?
Why such a pause?
Probably.
Did you lie to your other friend Barrett Bulware when you took his money?
Interesting pause with Chris Wilson.
No, sir.
No.
I didn't lie like I told you. I didn't lie directly to him. I lied to him by omission like we talked about. I mean,
I just didn't tell him the truth.
I didn't talk to him. I didn't see him at that time.
Did you lie to your law partners?
I want to know what's going on with Chris Wilson now.
I did.
Did you lie to him about the kennels?
Some of them.
Did you lie to Mark Ball?
Yeah, based on what Mark said, I believe I did.
Did you lie to Ronnie Crosby?
Are you lying
According
to
to
us
what he
now?
said, I believe I did.
Did you lie to Johnny Parker?
I don't believe I ever discussed that with Johnny.
Did you lie to him about the finances when you borrowed that money in July of 2021?
I don't know if I lied to him about. I don't think Johnny asked me. I don't think I had to lie to Johnny about that, so I don't know.
Did you lie? Well, you certainly didn't disclose to him the truth when you borrowed that $250,000, did you?
I did not tell him what I was going to use it for.
I mean, didn't we say before that not telling the whole truth is the same as telling a lie?
Sure it is.
You don't think that's a lie, though?
I'm just saying, Mr. Waters, I'm not taking issue with that, but I don't even know that Johnny and I mean, Johnny had loaned me money numerous times. It wasn't any long sit-down discussion where Johnny wanted to know exactly what I was doing with it. That conversation would have been, I needed it, Johnny was always willing to
questioned
help
him.
me, and that would have been the conversation.
And
So,
Creighton's missing the point. No one questioned him
on that
because he's Alec
specific
Murdaugh.
event, did I lie to him? I don't know.
Yeah, he ended up being out $477,000, didn't he?
He ended up being out a lot of money.
And thank you for your qualifications as to that. Did you lie to Lee Cope?
I don't know. I don't know if Lee Cope was around when I said that or not.
Did you lie to Danny Henderson?
I did lie to Danny.
Did you lie to Jeannie Seconder?
I don't, about finances, yes, I did.
You didn't ever talk to her about the kennels?
No, I wouldn't think so.
Why would
Did
he?
you lie to Annette Griswold?
I did.
Did you lie to Christy Gerald, your other secretary?
Creighton, you have
Paralegal.
proved that he is.
I don't believe she and I discussed, I would have at some point, I'm
liar.
sure.
Did you lie to Michael Gunn?
I'm sure I did at some point, but.
Well, you stole
I
his
mean,
company
Michael
name.
wasn't involved in any of this, so I don't know that any of this ever came up with Michael.
You just stole his company name.
Did you lie to your clients? Did you lie to Pamela Pinckney?
I did.
Natasha Thomas?
I don't know that I dealt with Natasha, but I certainly lied about that.
Hakeem Pinckney?
Again, I don't know that I talked to Hakeem, but I certainly lied about that.
Arthur Badger?
I did.
The Plyler girls?
Okay.
I'm not sure that I talked specifically to them, but I lied about that.
Dion Martin?
I lied to Dion.
Johnny Bush?
Yes.
Manuel Cristiani?
I didn't have any conversations with him, but I certainly lied about it.
Jamie Risher?
Yes.
Randy Drawdy?
Yes.
Jordan Jinks?
Yes.
Mary Duncan?
Yes.
Adriana Hay?
Okay.
Yes.
Angel Gary?
Yes.
Christopher Anderson?
Yes.
Elise Mallory?
Yes.
He will ask,
Thomas Moore?
did you lie to this jury? That's the last question.
No.
You never lied to him? You just took his money. You never had to actually lie to his face, is what you're saying?
Yep, that's what he's saying.
He and I never had a conversation, but I did take that. I did take that money.
Did you lie to Tony Satterfield just a couple of months before June 7th?
Yep.
We saw the text. You want me to get it out?
Oh gosh.
Just remind me. There's been a lot. Just remind me what it was.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 463.
And I don't remember the exact date. So
That was in April of 2021. Is that right?
I think they're
You
setting
text him
up
and
a
tell
closing
him how
argument.
hard you're working on the case, when in fact you had stolen
A closing argument
millions of
similar
dollars
to
from
depth
him.
we heard, where you saw
Tony Satterfield, who got up on the stand and told the jury about that.
to
I texted
believe
him on
to believe
April
Alec, you have to believe all these other
12th,
people are lying.
so
They're setting that up.
5 weeks before June 7th.
I just don't know if it matters.
Told him everything was okay. You're working hard, right? It's a complex case.
Yeah, I told him I was working on the case.
He was the son of your longtime housekeeper, Gloria.
I'm sorry?
He was the son of your longtime housekeeper, Gloria, who had served your family for many years.
That's correct.
And you stole millions from those boys.
I stole those funds.
And he and his family had started asking questions as we moved to June 7th. Didn't that happen?
No, I mean, there wasn't any rise in them asking questions, no, sir. I mean, he periodically checked in and asked me questions, but,
It had just started getting
you know,
reported that there was a
it had
settlement.
come out
Yep, in the media.
long before
It wasn't
this.
that long before.
I believe in the Island Packet, that there had been a
Mandy Matney wrote about it.
settlement of $500,000. But, I mean, that had been months and months, if I'm not mistaken. And so I didn't notice any uptick in Tony asking questions, and I don't believe that there was any uptick in Tony asking questions before June the 7th.
But he would have known about the settlement before June the
You
7th.
just gratuitously out of the blue decided to lie to him and send that text?
Sent it in response to the media
Were there
reports.
things going on externally that caused you to need to head him off at the pass before further questions started to be asked about money you couldn't pay back at that point in time.
Nah, I don't think there was anything. I mean, on April 21st, I don't know what external factors you're talking about.
Do you want to explain that one anymore?
Creighton,
Explain what?
Whatever you want.
I just want to answer your questions, Mr. Waters.
he just wants to be done, so do the rest of us. Did you lie to this jury? Are you done going down the
Lied
lines?
to everyone about the side of the road, the people that came to stop to help, and the ambulance folks, and the 911, and Ryan Kelly, and the composite sketch artist, and all of them, correct?
I lied to a lot of people about that.
You know why people lie, Mr. Murdaugh?
When they're guilty, Creighton.
Because they know they've done something wrong.
For the most time, I do.
And you've been able to lie quickly and easily and convincingly if you think it'll save your skin for well over a decade.
Yeah.
Isn't that true?
I have lied well over a decade.
And you want this jury
To believe you.
to believe a story manufactured to fit the evidence that you brought forth just yesterday, after hearing this trial's worth of testimony.
No, sir, that's not correct.
Mr. Murdaugh, we went through this for a while, but you remember at the beginning of your testimony, I asked you whether or not you agreed that trying to explain your presence on the kennel video was the most important part of your testimony before this jury. You remember that? And you said, oh, not the most important. I said, was it
It
the least
is.
important? You recall that?
I think the
Yes.
reason he took the stand is
Yeah, I
because of
recall you
that.
asking those questions, yes, sir.
And you agree it's important, don't you?
He had to take the stand because of the
I
kennel
agree that
video.
is an important component.
That's why you had to take the
But I
stand,
think there's
though.
a lot of important components.
And you?
Nothing's more important than that kennel video in this timeline. I don't think. I really don't.
Testified yesterday,
He has to answer
during
for
cross
the kennel
yesterday
video.
and cross today.
No kennel video, no prosecution.
It's kind of evolved on the fact of the factors that led you to decide to lie at some point during that interview with David Owen, correct?
I disagree with that. I don't think those factors have evolved. I mean, you've asked some more specific questions, but those factors are still the same factors. You may have asked questions and gained a little more detail, but those factors haven't changed.
But it was the dope paranoia, it was the fact that the deputy took your GSR, it was the fact that your law partners and Greg Alexander and the sheriff were telling you you needed to have a lawyer before you talked to police. It was the factor that you got in the car with Dave Owen and thought he was somebody else from some case 10 years ago, correct?
That believing David Owens was the person involved in the case that I talked about was one of the factors that caused me to distrust SLED.
All right, and then also you said that they started
general.
asking you about, in that first interview, about your relationship with Maggie and Paula, and that's one thing you mentioned as well,
And that
correct?
was certainly something that contributed to me having paranoid thinking.
Poot and Jim look exhausted. Why are you over at the Elmo Creighton? He is trying to make the defense's case seem based on lies. He is making Alex's story convenient. Oh, it's convenient that you got on the stand and fit this all together. You admitted to what you had to, and you concocted the rest of it. But I think for this prosecution to go forward without the kennel video, they can't place him at the timeline. So without the kennel video, I don't think they could have brought this prosecution. I don't think they could have filed it. I still think they should have waited on filing it. But the kennel video put him on a timeline that was too close for him not to have heard it if you believe the state's timeline. Without the kennel video, anything could have happened. But knowing he's at the kennels at 8:44 and the state arguing that they were killed right around 8:49, the kennel video pulls it together. Okay, so what are they pulling up? They're just gonna let him, oh, they pulled up pictures of something. I don't know what they're pulling up. But Alec is gonna fill the space with something. And that's what he's doing. They are flexing back and forth between the financial crimes, but they're pulling up pictures of something. And if Creighton oversteps, it's going to make the jury feel empathetic to Alec. What kind of cheese? I was eating cheese sticks. Colby Jack cheese sticks.
Playing the Daniel Green body cam video, 2026.
I'll answer that.
They are dead on that.
Yes, sir. That's what it looks like.
He definitely asked that.
Where are you now?
I think he said, "What do I do now?"
All right. Yeah, the police are here now. The police are here now. That's my brother.
Okay. When was the last time you were here with them? Or talked to them or anything like that?
It was earlier tonight. I don't know the exact time, but
Okay.
I left. I was probably gone an hour and a half from my mom's, and I saw them about 45 minutes before that.
That was Sergeant Green, correct?
Yeah, that was Sergeant Green.
And at that point in time, SLED was not there. No one had gotten GSR from you.
Fair.
Your law partners or Sheriff Hill were not there.
That's correct.
No one had asked you about your relationships. David Owen was not there,
That's correct.
but you still told the same lie. And all those reasons that you just gave this jury about the most important part of your testimony was a lie too. Isn't that true, Mr. Murdaugh?
I disagree with that.
Nothing further.
How would he know to lie about 45
Ladies and
minutes
gentlemen, we'll take a
before
break now. Please do not discuss the
if
case.
he didn't know when they were killed? And that's why I think the kennel video is the most important thing. How would he have known what the timeline needed to be to fit a lie if he didn't kill them? And that's what the prosecution is going to argue. The defense is going to argue, no, he's just simply wrong as to the time. But he lied about the last time they saw him to the very first officer that came up. Didn't mention it to 911 at all. Well, when I left, they were by the
Please do not
kennels.
discuss the case. We'll take 15 minutes.
15 minutes for us to answer some questions. So let's do that real quick. We're gonna get to the questions real quick, and I'm gonna thank you again. We hit, look, y'all. Thank you. We're over 700,000, so I appreciate it. Thanks y'all for doing the likey, subscribey things. I very much appreciate it, law nerds. I will absolutely tell my youngest that this makes us a real YouTuber. He is going to disagree, but I think it does. So thank you so much for that. All right, let's get to questions. But first, we need to celebrate. Did we celebrate yet? We didn't bing yet, did we? We binged, but we didn't celebrate the bing. So let's celebrate the bing. I think we binged. Did we bing twice today? Did we play this in the morning session too? I think we did. So let's go. Oh, it binged. Move your head. Thanks, y'all. Some of you were there on that stream when we hit 100,000. with Dr. B, and we've had so many since then. So I very much appreciate it. Sam Kennedy said, I'm exhausted. Make it stop now. All of us are with you. Exhausted. Absolutely exhausted. And it was a long cross. There were points in this cross that I got very frustrated. And you saw that because, where was it? I want to go back and watch it, but Alec was talking about why somebody would have done this. And Creighton just didn't pause. I can tell you for a fact, this is about the people that killed that killed Paul. I can tell you for a fact, they hated Paul Murdaugh and had anger in their heart. And he went to continue, and Creighton cut him off. And then I started screaming at the screen. He said nothing about Maggie. And he said it again to Maggie's sister. Whoever did this had been thinking about it a long time. He had very specific facts. You didn't see him saying, I have no idea who could have done this or why. Or, I think it's about the boat. It's the only thing I can think of because I don't know who could have done this or why. I can tell you for a fact is a different type of testimony than who could have done this to my kid? Who could have done this to my boy? Who could have done this to Paul? People were mad on social media. They were saying the most vile things. It was so outlandish. I didn't think anybody would do that. Who could have done it? Who? How? Why? And you know what else we've never heard him say in all of his testimony? If only I had stayed at the kennels. Not once did he say, if only I had stayed at the kennels longer. What he said was, I got out of there. I got the chicken out of the mouth and I got out of there. You know what Maggie's sister said? You saw it on the screen. You saw Maggie's sister saying how devastated she was that she encouraged Maggie to go back to Moselle that night. You could see in her testimony the guilt and the anguish and the pain in Maggie's sister's testimony that she encouraged Maggie to go back to Moselle. Your husband needs you. Go back to Moselle. And you could see how devastating it was to her. You saw zero regret from Alec Murdaugh. If only I had stayed there. If only I had been there another 10 minutes. If only I hadn't gone to see my mom that night. No regret that he could have done something differently. And so many of you that have been in the path of tragedy do that to yourselves. What could I have done to have presented this thing? Could I have told them not to go? That's what we saw from Maggie's sister. Just devastation and guilt. None of it from Alec Murdaugh. None. No survivor's guilt at all. Yes, from Maggie's sister. From the partners in the law firm, you saw devastation. We didn't see it. We didn't know. And we saw none of it from Alec. Will the prosecution point that out? I don't know. I don't know if they're listening. Creighton had things that he wanted to get to, but didn't slow down for me. Didn't slow down for the parts that matter a lot. And I don't know if they will ever argue that we didn't see him saying, who could have done this? I should have just been there. We're not going to see him. I don't know if we'll see Creighton arguing those things because they need to be combined with the lies that were also told. And you've got to pull all of that together. And I don't know if we will see Creighton pull all of those things together. But whatever this jury does, Alec Murdaugh's testimony is going to be the critical point for them. So we'll see. We never saw it Sarah Lancaster, if only, never said it once. No, what he said was boat case. And they did it so bad. They did this to them. They. Not who. When his law partners turned up, he never said who could have done this, who did this. It was they did it, immediately shifting blame away from himself. And in his testimony, he said the dogs weren't going wild because nobody else was there within minutes. Then again, how did he get so clean? How did he get so clean at all? And even on the 911 call, it was never, who could have done this? It was, there's a boat case. Those are just my observations. Look, I've done a lot of trials. I've talked to a lot of victims. I've talked to a lot of witnesses. I've talked to, not as many defendants because they don't always testify. I've talked to a fair share of defendants. I've talked to defendants who testified against other defendants. There are things that stuck out for me that are missing. This prosecutor is mostly a white-collar crime prosecutor, and I think we see that here. Will he argue it? I don't know. I see it, but I don't know if he will. So we'll see. Chat, you let me know what you think, because we're here to talk about it. Ashley said, what is the exact time of death? Well, Coroner Hansey doesn't have an exact time of death. No one ever took an exact time of death. They put their hands in the armpits. For those of you new to this case, I know a lot of people picked up at the defendant's testimony. I get it. It tends to be the most interesting part of the case, so there is no shade at all. A lot of us have suffered through 24 days, so I get tuning in for this part and being like, I don't care about the foundation and who marked things with flags. He put his hands in their armpits and guesstimated a time of death between 8:30 and 10. And then he kind of split the difference to 9 p.m. and just guesstimated it, put it on the death certificate. Which is why Creighton is arguing that there is the cell phones. And when the cell phones go quiet, the time of death is right around there, 8:49, 8:50. But, Coroner Pitts, I've never heard anything else. I've never heard anything like it. It was, my brain is still buffering. Did Mr. Pitts wear gloves? No, it would have messed it up. And how bloody did his hands get? No one asked. Probably because they didn't know the answer. And I still have a lot of questions as well. Question was circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence is placing him there within the timeline enough to be guilty. I think it's enough. I think it's enough for a jury that wants to find him guilty to find him guilty. Placing him there, no other opportunity for anyone else. You have opportunity. You have the guns. No, there's no evidence of anyone else on the property. I think the timeline is very helpful. On a circumstantial case, and if you stick with me through jury instructions, you'll hear the jury instructions mostly about rain. If somebody walks into a building and they're shaking off an umbrella and they've got some raindrops on their shirt and some rain in their hair, you're allowed to assume that it's raining outside, even if they don't tell you it's raining outside, even if you just see that. Could it be that someone's hosing them off? I mean, sure, it's possible that somebody's just got a hose and they just had an umbrella and that's why they're wet. But it's more likely that it's raining, so you're allowed to reach those logical conclusions with circumstantial evidence. I think there's enough here for a jury to find it with circumstantial evidence. But again, I think that changed dramatically with Alec's testimony, because now they've got his explanations, and I don't know if his explanations are that good. I think some of his explanations are very reasonable. I think Creighton's entire point, you decided to lie, is ridiculous. You decided to lie here. No, he lies fluidly and easily. He didn't decide to lie. I think for Creighton, the better argument would have been, you knew you needed to tell them you weren't at the kennels because you knew that's when they were killed. That's the more powerful question. When did you decide to lie? I decided to lie when Sled asked me about my relationship. But Creighton had a point that he wanted to get to. And the point that he wanted to get to was that on that very first interaction with police, before Sled even showed up, that he said that he wasn't there. He saw them 45 minutes before. That was the point Creighton spent so long trying to back his way into. was that first. It's not Sled's fault. Because when Alec got up and Alec's argument on direct exam was, I lied to Sled because I don't trust Sled. And Sled planted evidence, and Sled did this, and Sled did that. Alec never once mentioned Owen misstating things to the grand jury. And the defense is going to argue he lied, and the prosecution is going to argue he didn't have those following reports. So he misstated things that was never corrected, but it wasn't a lie. It was a misstatement because he didn't have the reports. That's going to go back and forth. But Alec never said that. I was surprised. I was surprised he didn't say it at all. So that's kind of where we're at on this. But the fact that he distanced himself from the time of the deaths before Sled even arrived is the more powerful argument. But he was trying, Creighton just wanted to get to that. And I don't necessarily agree with the way he got there. So with that, my thought they lean too far into the financials and not someone else could come in 1 hour, commit the murders with the family guns. AM was the only one with opportunity. They didn't talk about opportunity enough at all. Maybe they will. Our jury said, is it a filibuster at this point? Yes. I think we got to a filibuster because, again, the defense has those experts they want to get to this afternoon. After the break, are we going to see the defense ask to interrupt, redirect, and put their experts on? Maybe. Question, those aren't facts enough for the case, though, right? I can't vote guilty because he didn't react like others. It's part of the argument, but it's not the only argument, and it's not the only evidence in this case. When they did the motion to dismiss, the judge was like, there's enough evidence here for a jury to find him guilty, and I think that there is. Do I think it's the cleanest case? No. Do I think it's the case with the most evidence in the world? No. Do I think there are holes in this case? Yes. But the jury can take all of those circumstances together, trying to change witness testimony. The fact that he says he touched them when he didn't, the fact that he's distancing himself from the time of the murders, the fact that there's no evidence that anybody else was there, the fact that there's no other DNA from anyone else that was there, no other footprints from anyone else that was there. We don't know about tire prints because the tire prints were a big old mess, and that's what the defense is going to argue. But if they don't believe Alec and they believe the prosecution, there's enough. And they can go through all of it. And they will. And they can disregard when he's explaining away the kettle video and why he lied. The prosecution's going to say he lied because he knew he needed to distance himself from the time of the murders, and he knew that because he knew when the murders happened. And the only way you know when the murders happen is if you're there and you do it. Or you're there when somebody does it. But the defense is going to say he just didn't trust law enforcement. But that's Alec's explanation. If the jury doesn't believe Alec because he's a lying liar that lies, then we're done. No other phones, right? So I'm sure Alec is furious. And if I'm the prosecution, because now Creighton's leaned all the way into being petty. If I'm the prosecution and the defense says we want to break up the redirect, I would say, no, I don't want them to have overnight to prep the redirect. They need to start now. They can bring their experts in the morning. I don't know if the judge will do that. We'll see. We'll see. Designer McGowan. I think he is guilty AF, but the last question made me feel really bad for him, almost kicking someone when they are down. And Creighton leaned heavily onto Alec to the point where I saw a lot of you in the chat, a lot of you saying, this is actually making me feel bad for Alec. And I do. There are times I do feel bad for Alec. And I think he was very genuine when he was saying, I'm not successful. And there are going to be those that say, no, he's a master manipulator. That's all manipulation. But I think Alec is ashamed. I think he's ashamed of being an addict. I think, and I didn't know what I thought about his addiction before. And I think a lot came into this case going, is this a convenient story? But when he was describing his life and his addiction and how he used them and the shame around that and the fact that he didn't go into the solicitor's office because of it, I understood better. Does it forgive everything that he's done? No. But I understood better because he testified. That's not a convenient lie. And so there were some that are saying, I feel bad for him. Cases are messy. I don't think this case isn't black and white at all. It is so gray. And that is something that's going to be hard for the jury to decide, because I think today, a lot of you probably still have a lot of questions about this case, and that's fair. And we're not done yet. And you got to watch the push-pull on, does this make me think guilty? Does this make me think not guilty? Does this leave me with questions? And that's where the jury is too, struggling with it. Or they're just so over Creighton that they're like, please fucking God, just shut up. He never once said anywhere, I miss them so much, or what will I do without them? On the first video that they were just playing, he said, "What do I do now?" And I think that can be interpreted two ways. I really do. Kit Kat said something that stood out to me. He was that he admitted to all the thefts except his brother's. It just made me think that he feels admitting to hurting family is worse than those other thefts. Or, because everything goes both ways in this case, he feels like that's not really stealing and he's splitting hairs in his own mind. He's like, no, they gave me 2 checks and I cashed them. It was an error. It was a whoopsie doodle. Colby said more feasible. He did it, cleaned, got rid of the weapons all perfectly in 17 minutes. Or did he do it and pulled up on them and didn't get blood on him? I think number 2, I don't know. Or he didn't do it and pulled up on them and didn't get blood on him. I don't know. But then why lie about it? But then also, why wouldn't you lie about it? I think if he didn't do it personally, do the killings, he definitely was the one who paid the trigger man. And that is definitely not what he's being charged with. And I know some were saying, is he going to come up here and say someone else did it? I don't know. Emily, why didn't they ask him about his clean shirt? I don't think they wanted to give him an opportunity to explain. I think court is coming back. That has been a quick break, but I did talk a lot. I did talk a lot. Sorry, y'all. I was very chatty this break. I had thoughts. That was my summary. I'll do a shorter summary at the end of the day so I can get to more questions. Wait, why is Poot standing up? Because Poot's going to argue that they should bring the experts. Please help me understand. Is motive an element of murder? No. Motive is not an element of murder. The jury can consider motive an opportunity, but it is not something that has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. It's something that the prosecution's allowed to bring in, but it's not something that has to be proved. And in a lot of cases, I never even touched motive. I was like, I don't know why the fuck people do what they do. Here comes the jury. So the judge already said, bring the jury. I was talking. Poot wants to make an argument, and the court doesn't want to hear it. I think Poot wanted to argue. Oh my God, this is buffering. I'm going to switch feeds real quick.
All right, thank you. Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I don't think they were ready for redirect. I think they wanted to bring their experts. Me.
Mr. Murdaugh, we spent a long time yesterday and a fair amount of time today talking about financial misdeeds.
They called that jury in and they're like, Poot, sit down.
Have you been criminally charged for those financial crimes?
I have been.
And you have pending charges against?
I do.
He's got 99 problems, Jim. We know.
You were asked specifically about $792,000 in Ferris fees that you diverted from the law firm. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
And I think you were asked about an accounting or where that money went, and it went out pretty quickly, roughly.
Yes, sir.
And you recall testimony
feels more
that
like a cross-examination.
$500,000 went to Curtis Eddie Smith.
I do.
And what would that have been for?
That would have all been for pills?
For opioids?
Yes, sir. Specifically, all I was taking at that time was oxycodone and OxyContin.
And you were an addict, were you not?
I am an addict.
You are an addict. And did you repeatedly lie to those you love to cover up your addiction?
I did.
And were you concerned that you would be exposed if you didn't continue to lie about
This feels like
your
a cross-examination.
conduct?
That's leading. See how the answers are short, yes, no answers, and the
If
questions
you didn't continue to lie about your
give you the answer?
conduct?
I did.
This feels much more like a cross-examination.
There were some specific things you were asked about, which I'd like to go over. One thing you had referred to
I hate the
a text
audio.
message that you'd seen later on between Maggie and Blanca. Do you recall that?
I do.
And it's in the evidence as Defendant's Exhibit 54. And Doug, if you could pull that up, please, sir. And if you could highlight the Blanca text. Is this the text message you're referring to?
It is.
And and I'll just read it. It says, "T.Y." That's thank you. It says, "T.Y. I'm waiting at Dr. Alex wants me to come home. I had to leave door open at Edisto, but trust Mexicans to shut a lot for me. His dad is back in the hospital. The last doctor claims not cancer, it pneumonia." And then she has some faces. "Alex is about to die. Hope he doesn't go down there to sleep. Alex needs to take care of himself as well." Is that the text message you're referring to?
Yes, sir.
And did Blanca share this message with you after Maggie was murdered?
Blanca ultimately she shared that with me. She first told me that, Maggie was worried about me, how much she loved me, and that she was worried about me, and I texted her.
Okay.
We've heard this text from
Now,
Maggie
you were,
quite a lot. If this is your
asked-
first time
you
hearing the
down
text
there.
from
You
Maggie,
asked
yes. Blanca was asked about it
questions
too.
about
These are Alex's brothers that they keep showing in the other camera, Randy
Conversations,
and John Marvin. That's John
around the
Marvin.
dinner table on the 7th about, well, we didn't eat at the table, but around while you were eating dinner about Paul's health. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So they keep showing his two brothers. They're saying Ferris fees.
179,
The
180.
$792,000 are the
And ask
Ferris
if you can
fees.
Identify these two.
This feels much more like a cross-examination. So, that's John Marvin.
I can.
And what are they?
It's text from, let's see, it's a text from Paul to me on May the 30th.
And then, and what's 180? Exhibit 180 behind it?
I don't know.
That's a picture of Paul's feet.
Your Honor, we'd move defendants' exhibits 179, 180 into evidence at this time without objection, I believe.
Without objection, Your Honor.
Submitted.
Pull up. Do you have 179, or we've got to put it on? You can let me put it on the Elmo.
Yeah, this,
Alex, do these, does this text message refer to Paul's feet swelling?
They do.
So if you'll do, you can pull it up, like, go up a little more so we can read it. And it says, from Paul, and that phone number, is that your phone number?
That is, this is my phone number, 1227. My feet swole up. It has something to do with my blood pressure. Get me an appointment as soon as it's convenient.
And what's the date of this?
May the 30th.
2021, right?
Yes, sir.
And if, Doug, if you'll show the picture, I believe this is a blow-up of the picture that's in this Exhibit 180. Can you
okay.
pull out? Is that a picture of
Paul's feet.
that Paul had sent you of his feet swelling up?
It is.
Is this what y'all discussed, when you're eating dinner?
Yes,
Okay.
along with many other times.
So he
You'd
got.
also,
So he got a doctor's appointment, did he not?
you were asked questions about
Thank you all for not diagnosing Paul's health problems. I appreciate
your
it.
dad's condition. and whether he was terminal or not. Do you remember that?
Whether they were
I do
talking
remember
about it
questions about him.
really
Okay,
matters
and,
more.
Gosh, Doug, I think it's, the extended timeline, is it states 5:30, is that the right number? States 5:20, Counsel. States 5:20, if you'll pull it up, please. It's already in the evidence. And if you'll go to page 14.
Sprite, I appreciate the super chat. I don't think it's an unpopular opinion.
and
I
if
don't
you'll
know.
blow up
I think
the,
there's a great mix on this case. I don't think there's a
the
unanimous
entry at
agreement
142.54
on this at
at
all.
the bottom of the page.
So, I still think there are many
Is this a,
that have
text
questions
that,
about whether he killed
that
his
you
family.
and-
I don't think that's
and we'll-
unpopular. I think there's a split opinion on this.
do you recall, this is the text that you and other family members received about your father's condition?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and it says, Daddy was just seen by the pulmonologist in Savannah. His opinion is dramatically different from the other doctors. He thinks Daddy has pneumonia and needs to be hospitalized to be treated for pneumonia. He thinks there could be an obstruction, but is more confident that it is all or mostly pneumonia. Daddy is being admitted to Candler St. Joseph Hospital now. He will have a study done to see whether or not there is an obstruction, and his treatment will be tailored accordingly. Right now, his pulmonologist does not. Go to the next page. Does not believe that he'll be getting radiation treatment, and in fact, the pulmonologist says that the palliative radiation treatment to try to open the airway is a Hail Mary.
Did I read
In
this
his
correctly?
opinion, most likely not work.
Okay,
And
so
he
is,
goes on to say, if he is right, and this is pneumonia, is much more treatable and can certainly give the immunotherapy a chance to work. Is
Okay.
that what you're referring to?
That's the text I was talking about that came when talking to Jeannie Seckinger.
I absolutely think there will
And
be
the,
a recross.
And this wasn't a terminal diagnosis on the 7th, was it?
Not on the 7th. That was actually a little bit of positive news.
Okay.
That was short-lived, but it was positive at the time.
You can take that down for now, Doug. But stay on that exhibit. Now, you were asking, if you'll go to page 46, please, the same exhibit, 520. Page 46.
This goes to
And, if
answering
you'll
why he didn't go to his
Highlight and
father's.
blow out the 90218.
I actually think it
Alec
helps him
Murdaugh's
more if
iPhone shows.
Alec knows his. I think it's better for the defense if Alec knows his dad's terminal.
Now, Alec, do you remember being
Because
asked about these
why would he need to kill his wife and kid to get away with anything?
Travel during this period of time.
I do.
And I think you testified, your belief was you're just getting ready to leave to go to your mom's house. Is that right?
That's correct.
I'll answer that more at
I
the
mean,
break.
that would have
the
been the
terminal.
time I was right before I left to go there.
And you were, looks like you had made some phone calls during this period of time, correct?
Yes, the record show.
Alec, did you have Maggie's phone with you at any time between 9:02 and 9:06?
I didn't have Maggie's phone with me anytime that night.
The state stayed well away from that line of questioning. They asked everything else.
And Doug, if you'll go to page
But
45,
they did
please.
not ask about that on cross.
If you go to the entry at 8:53:15 to 8:55:32.
So his dad being terminal goes both ways because he said he was going to go see his dad. But if his dad was terminal, why does he need the sympathy or empathy from killing Maggie and Paul, if that's what the state is saying? Because his dad passes 2 days later. That would have
am I
delayed
missing?
all the hearings too.
Can you,
So-
go, you're missing it. Go up one more entry, please.
You're missing it. Me, this whole trial, Evelyn, I don't think I'm sticking up for
one-
Alex.
no,
I'm
the one
trying
before
to look at
steps.
both sides of this case because a lot of
And then
things in this
take it all
case
the way to the bottom.
cut two ways.
Done.
But
Thank
it's okay. You can talk to people in the chat that think I'm rooting for the prosecution. Y'all can have a discussion.
This is in evidence.
This case
is
goes both
Agent
ways.
Rudowski's
I do my best to show you both lines of thought for the
timeline, and it
lawyers.
says Maggie
Defense is
Murdaugh's
going to do
phone,
this. Prosecution's going to do this. So you can
iPhone
see
shows
both.
59 steps traveled between 8:53:15 and 8:55:32. Were you walking with Maggie Murdaugh's phone during that period of
The
time?
state
I wasn't
never
walking with
brought this
Maggie's
up.
phone anytime that night.
And if you'll look at Agent Rudowski's entries, is there entry of her phone showing steps during any time between
If the jury doesn't
9:02
believe Alec, it's
and
not going to matter.
9:06? Do you see any on this page from 8:53 to 8:55?
No, sir.
If you'll turn the next page,
But those phones weren't moving together.
page 46. Going down to your steps,
Jenny
there
H in
any
the chat
recording
said
of-
she found all dressed ruffles
phone steps,
in Vegas.
phone recording
Maybe I should ask my
Steps.
grocery store instead of lobbying
Recording.
Ruffles.
to the data we now have for Maggie's phone at any point in time up to 9:02.
No, sir.
I am here for Bubba, truly, in this
And
whole
have you
trial. I'm rooting
repeatedly
for
asked
Bubba.
SLED
Justice for
to-
Bubba.
get the data from the OnStar, from the cell phones, to evaluate whether your phone and Maggie's phone were ever moving at the same time? You made that multiple requests.
I repeatedly asked David Owens about that information.
Becky, it's Bubba. We're here for
And
Bubba.
when you
at
asked
this
that
point.
question, were you aware that Maggie's phone had been located, down the road, half a mile or more? Is that right?
Yeah, I knew where her phone had been located.
And why was it important to you to get that information?
Because I knew that whoever had done this to them had Maggie's phone. And I knew that my phone and Maggie's phone and my car were never together.
So his phone, his
At
car, and
any
Maggie's
point in
phone were
time.
never together at any point in time.
Now, you have given inaccurate times in many statements to law enforcement in this case, have you not?
I did.
I feel attacked on all the timelines. I couldn't do it.
And we reviewed some of those in your direct examination. One was Paul getting to Moselle around 5 p.m. Do you remember that?
I do.
Were you lying to Agent Owens or anybody when you said Paul got there at 5 p.m.?
No, I wasn't lying to him. I thought that at the time.
And when you,
Most of the times or a lot of the times when I gave times, I qualified them and say, but, you can look at this. I pointed them to my office, to the call log, to the key card like we talked about, or my phone, or my own star.
and when you told the agents that you thought you got to the office 8:30, 9 o'clock on that morning of June 7th, well, you were wrong, right?
I was wrong.
Were you lying?
No, I wasn't lying.
And when Deputy Green drove up,
I think he's
and
assuming
first,
it.
you had the first encounter with him, I believe you told him that you had been gone to your mom's house for an hour and a half. Is that right? We just heard it.
The last one,
Yes, sir.
yeah, hour and a half. I think that is what I told him.
Hour and a half. And that the last time you saw Maggie and Paul was 45 minutes before that.
That's what he
Yeah,
said.
that's what I said.
And when you spoke to Agent Green, Deputy Green, it was about, I think the records show they didn't arrive on the scene until 10:22 or something like that. Is that right?
That sounds right. I think that's what the records show. That sounds right.
If you learn anything from this trial,
And
it's
that,
don't give specific times if you don't know them. And if you do, use Use your
Were you lying
context
to Agent,
clues.
excuse me, Deputy Green, when you told
He
him
doesn't
what
think he's
time,
lying.
how long you thought you'd been at your mother's?
He
And
thinks he doesn't
the
know.
last time you saw Maggie and Paul?
No, sir,
But
I
that-
wasn't lying to him.
Doesn't make sense with Shelley Smith's testimony as the problem. But he doesn't think he's
Were you
lying.
trying to mislead him in any way?
No, sir, not when Mr. Green got there.
Now, you've admitted, the first few questions that I asked you yesterday and multiple times today, that
he
you
doesn't
lied to Agent Owen and Deputy Rutland, and Agent Owen and Agent Croft.
He's more
And
comfortable in direct because he doesn't
on
have to be on guard. He
a couple
trusts Jim
occasions
to not.
about your whereabouts
shit him
following
up.
dinner, correct?
I did lie to them, as we discussed
So he's not.
And-
repeatedly.
He's more
And you've
comfortable.
explained that it was this addiction, opioid-induced paranoia you just couldn't shake. Is that right?
That's right. You know, like I said, there's certain things, anything that make you paranoid, but I could get over it really quickly. But that night, I didn't.
And you had a bag of pills in your pocket, did you not?
I did.
And when you got down to the
It
kennels,
kind of is OnStar
I'm
in
not
this
gonna
case
repeat all
because the
that, but-
OnStar is snitching.
I mean, did you ever see anybody down there, anybody else?
No, there was nobody, there wasn't anybody down there when I was there.
And
That's what the evidence shows too.
did you believe that the information, whether you were there or not there, would advance their investigation in any way?
It's leading.
No, I didn't. I didn't think that,
And
Really?
why didn't you think that?
because they were fine and doing good when I left there.
What?
Did
That doesn't. No. Doesn't make any sense.
on the 911 call, do you remember that the call first went to Hampton?
I don't remember that, but I know that now.
And,
I don't know how we would have
And
known
what we
that
played
then.
here in the court in your testimony was the Colleton County handoff. Do you recall that?
Yep.
I do recall that.
Play the first bit then.
I think at some point, the part in Hampton might have gotten played too, didn't it? But I know the main part was the Colleton
Right.
part. That was like
Julia,
a minute
I'll talk about
into
that
the
at the break.
call.
But initially it went to Hampton, then subsequently it was transferred to Colleton.
That's right.
And then a minute or so into the Colleton call, you said, "I've been up to it now." Do you remember that?
I do remember saying that. I remember hearing it. I don't remember saying that, but I remember hearing it.
Okay.
And that's, I mean, that is accurate. And by up to it, at that point, I had gone all the way up to them at that point. When I first got out, I was close, but I wasn't right at them, I don't think.
Right. You were asked about the roadside shooting, and your intent was to end your life that day, was it not?
It was, no question.
And you were shot but not killed, and then you made up a lie to law enforcement about what happened, right?
That's correct.
Were you trying to protect Curtis Eddie Smith by doing that?
Was I trying to protect Curtis Eddie Smith?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know exactly. It all had to come together so quick. I don't know that I was trying to protect Curtis Eddie Smith.
Okay.
I may have been, but it was just, you know, I wasn't supposed to be there. And then I was.
When you say I wasn't supposed to be there, what do you mean by that?
We know what he
I
means,
intended for
Jim.
him to, I mean, I intended to be gone. I intended for him to shoot me, and I intended to be gone. And the one thing, my main concern at that point was that I did not want Buster,
My kiddo says hello.
I did not want Buster knowing that I had tried to do that.
Okay.
That was my motivation in telling that story.
I see. Did you eventually voluntarily
Jim,
convey to
Jim,
Agent Kelly and others
Jim,
that was a fabrication?
you
I did.
spoke
I
through
did.
most of that
After-
interview with
I
Pooh.
don't know, a few days in,
You and Pooh.
in detox, when I finally got over those initial, just where I could just function, I think I told you first, then I think I told Buster, then I think I told Randy and John, and y'all arranged either the next day or 2 days later to come, and we called Ryan Kelly.
I have never seen law enforcement allow
Well,
an interview like
you've lied
that
to your
ever.
family over
Ever.
many years. have
They
you
tell
not?
the attorneys to be
I lied
quiet
to my family about
and leave if
my
they can't be
addiction.
quiet.
And you hid from them you were stealing client money, did you not?
Oh, I never, they didn't know anything about that.
And you've lied to your law partners about financial dealings and perhaps your addiction?
Is Jim stealing
Yes.
the thunder? But you didn't lie
And
to
you've
this
lied to law
jury.
enforcement about not going down to the kennels after dinner, but eating dinner and taking a nap. Did you not?
I did.
Alec, did you murder Maggie?
I would never hurt Maggie.
That's not the
Did you
answer.
murder Paul?
I would never hurt Paul.
He's not saying no.
If I was under the pressure that they're talking about here, I can promise you I would hurt myself before I would hurt one of them. Without a doubt.
Thank you, that's all the questions.
Will the jury
Order.
believe him?
Please, court. You said that you were concerned when you talked to David Owen about the bag of pills in your pocket, correct?
I mean, no, sir, I'm not saying that I was concerned about that. I don't think I told you I was concerned about that. I'm just telling you that was a fact. I had a bag of pills in my pocket, and that was one of the things, that was one of the many things that
Oof,
came together that night.
coming in
Trying
hot.
to tell this jury that as a reasonable husband and father in this situation,
Hot, coming in hot.
concern about a bag of pills in your pocket was more important to you than telling law enforcement and narrowing the time when you last saw your wife and son alive. That's what you want to convince this jury of?
No, sir, because, I mean, the bag of pills in my pocket
No,
was
sir.
not
I want to convince them that I didn't
what I
kill
was
my wife and
concerned
son.
about sitting in there. It was, as I said, it was one of the many things that was going on. But I wasn't sitting there worried about those pills in my pocket.
Because he wasn't
You were
actually
asked
afraid
about-
of law enforcement.
Requesting the phone and automobile data. And that was because as a prosecutor and a lawyer, you had been manufacturing an alibi to cover
the
your
state's
tracks.
point.
No, sir, that's absolutely wrong.
Okay. Sure, boo-boo. That's exactly what Creighton wants to say. Uh-huh. Sure, man.
You admit you were wrong about a lot of things in what you told law enforcement about June 7th. Correct?
I was wrong about things. Some things.
Okay.
You were asked whether or not you voluntarily confessed to Agent Kelly, but you only did so after being
Right.
confronted with undeniable information. Correct?
No, sir, that's not correct at all. What I was told is that, and I believe this came from Randy, what I was told is that SLED had come up with some information that seemed like it was consistent with my story, and they needed me to verify some things, is what they told me. And, you know, I knew that resources had already been wasted. I didn't want them wasting any more resources, and I told them the truth, but there wasn't any, nobody had presented me with any evidence.
And you just testified that you told Jim Griffin first, correct?
I believe that I told Jim Griffin first.
But
Jim
at that time,
Griffin's
you
in the
didn't
middle
say
of
anything about those kennels, did you?
all of it.
To Jim Griffin at that
Correct.
time? No, sir, I didn't.
Jim Griffin is in the middle of all of the things. It's odd
You
how in the middle
testified on
he
direct
is.
yesterday,
And we
and
see
you were
it.
asked about leaving the kennels with your new story in light of the evidence that's been presented in this trial. Your words were, "I got out of there," correct?
Those were his words.
I believe that's what I said, yes, sir.
And you also said during your testimony on cross-examination that you hurt the ones you love the most, didn't you?
I did say that.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Good job at sitting
In
down,
saying
Creighton.
that, Mr. Waters, I just want to explain that answer.
Nope.
I mean, he just asked me a question about what I
He's
said,
arguing
and
with
I
the
was gonna
judge.
Explain why I said it.
All right.
As I told you earlier, you're implying to this jury and to me that was me
Oh, my
talking
God.
about hurting Maggie and Paul. And that's not what that was. What that was is me saying, I know I hurt my brother, my partners, my clients, many of whom I told you I loved, all of whom I cared for. And that's what that was when I'm talking about how my misdeeds, how I hurt the people worst were the ones I loved the most.
I just asked you what you said, correct, Mr. Murdaugh?
You did ask me what I said, but in asking me that, you're putting an implication on there that I am explaining.
Uh-huh.
I just asked you what you said.
Okay, yes, sir.
Thank you. Nothing further.
That was Creighton's best part. He argued back with the judge. That is a level of audacity that I have never seen. That isn't even Brooks level audacity. That is a different level audacity.
I'll stand for a moment while counsel approach.
I want to stand. They're going to talk about scheduling. Oh my God. Chat. I have never seen a defendant argue with a judge like that. Very few defendants in the cases we cover are lawyers, but the amount of control that Alec was trying to exert was something that Creighton wanted the jury to see. And he's like, you're putting an implication on it. He goes, no, those are just your words. Those are just your words, Mr. Murdaugh. Those are just your words. Look, what have you learned from me about law, folks? What is one of the most powerful things in any case? Most powerful. Using your words against you, right? Using a party's words against them, using their exact words. Use their own words against them. It is a very powerful strategy. I don't know what they're all talking about, and I am pissed that I'm not getting to see it, but I'm glad we're standing up. Look, we're gonna wiggle. Oh my God, my back is just, I've been sitting in this chair a lot. We're tired. There's a lot of gesticulating going up on the bench. Are they gonna break for the day? It's Friday.
Seated, please.
Are we gonna break early? Let's break early. I gotta figure out where I'm gonna be. I think I'm on News Nation tonight. Though they reschedule stuff so frequently.
Well,
you never know.
we've come to the end of this week.
Woo!
We will adjourn now and resume at 9:30 Monday morning. Have a great weekend. Do not discuss the case or allow yourself to be exposed to any information concerning the case. And we'll see you Monday morning. Have a great weekend. Jury's excused.
That is the end of week 5. The jury is excused. The end of week 5, y'all. We're going to get to questions in just a minute. We'll be back on Monday. They might want to put more stuff on the record. Jim is getting very aware of where the cameras are so people can't look at what he's saying to Alec. Jim's learning the internet.
Everyone be seated, please.
Oh shit, am I going to still have to take notes? Okay. Do we have anything?
Regarding scheduling, first up Monday morning, Mr. Harpootlian.
Your Honor, we anticipate having 4 witnesses on Monday.
What?
They would probably average an hour apiece. So I would suspect by lunchtime we would be, no?
Early afternoon.
Early afternoon, I'm told by Mr. Griffin, resting our case. And of course, Mr. Waters indicated he'll have 1 or 2 reply witnesses.
Couple right now, Your Honor. Obviously, we need to assess that when they complete their case, but it would not be lengthy.
So that begs the question, what day next week do we do argument and charge?
Well, it's all unpredictable. As we can see from today, it's pretty unpredictable.
I'm guessing. I'd hope Tuesday. I don't think that's going to be.
Y'all
if they have
schedule
any reply
Newman
witnesses.
laughs.
Wednesday would be more of a target. I'm just saying a target date that we can begin thinking about in terms of argument and charge. To that end, are you going to set a time limit on arguments, or are you going to just let us do whatever we want?
I do not set time limits on argument.
With
You
that
might
in
regret
mind,
that,
Mr.
sir.
Griffin and I mean, they get 2 arguments. We perhaps would like to split our final argument, which would, we think, with 4 weeks of testimony in there, it's going to be difficult
I
for
think
one
that's
person
fair.
to digest all of that. There's no problem with that, is there?
He might want to think on that.
I would object to that. I think Your Honor's rules and general practices consistent with one counsel handling argument.
Your Honor, I've seen it done both ways, and
I have 2.
4 weeks of testimony,
5.
I think it's very difficult for one person, and we only get 1 argument.
We know you do. You're
I've
the
never
defense.
done it, and I'm not inclined to do it.
Yep.
I'll look it over and consider it, but I'm not inclined to allow the defense to split closing arguments.
We would agree to a 2-hour limit.
He doesn't care about that.
Does that maybe incentivize to look at this?
Poot, that language with this judge is
Look
not
at it. I'm not
friendly.
inclined to do it. It's unprecedented, as far as I know, in the state of South Carolina. Except perhaps where you've been able to convince someone to the contrary.
I've actually objected to it when I was on his side of the courtroom.
Of course you did.
We have some days to think about that. Regarding closing arguments, I think we emailed you all a few days ago concerning any requested charge or charges that you might have.
Yes, we'll get those to you this weekend, if that's
Jury
acceptable.
instructions.
We'll try to do that, Your Honor, but we're preparing witnesses. How about Monday night?
That's fine.
Okay.
Anything else before we adjourn?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
Nothing from the bench, Your Honor.
A glass of
Hey,
whiskey for the
4:49. We are
chat, Your Honor.
adjourning for the weekend.
A whiskey for the chat. Bartender, please. All right. That's the end of week 5. I'm going to keep it up to see what everybody's doing as they exit court for the end of the week. Oh. End of week 5. I don't know if we made a ton of headway from the break when I gave you all of my breakdowns. So I think I'm just going to go to questions. It's timestamped. Replay crew, love you. It's timestamped where I gave kind of my overall thoughts. When we came back from the rest of it, there was not much more that I have to add to that, and I've been adding throughout. So, incentivize the judge was a very interesting turns of phrase, wasn't it? Hannah needs to yell. I need to yell. Here's how I felt when he's like, Your Honor, we'll agree to a 2-hour limit if that would incentivize you to change your mind. Just what? What are you, what?
This defense team really is just, hey, Your Honor, could we just talk our way around this a little bit more? No, Poot, he's sick of your shit. It's clear. He is very, very sick of your shit.
And you can see it. He gets sick of the prosecutor shit too, but the prosecutor has not said, oh, by the way, can we incentivize you to change your general standards, practices, and rules? That's what Poot's saying. And then Poot comes back with the, yeah, when I was a prosecutor, I used to object to that kind of shit too. When I was a prosecutor, defense attorneys did this all the time. They would come up to you at the bench when you were the DA, and they'd be like, I was a prosecutor. It's like, really? You were? Yeah, I was there for a year. Great. Can you please go get in line with the other defense attorneys? Because your case isn't up yet. And there were times, look, sometimes I'm petty. There were times where I would just be like, let's just take this case to the bottom of the pile. Your Honor, we're not ready to call that one just yet. So if you don't owe me, don't pretend that you do in court, to just be like, I used to be a DA. Great for you. Great for you. Defense attorneys would say it all the time. And Poot's doing it too. Your Honor, back in my day, I would object to that kind of shenanigans when I was on that side of the aisle. It just personally exhausts me. But I guess I am thrilled to see it not just being done in a patronizing way to female attorneys. I appreciate that he's also just doing it in a patronizing way to Creighton Waters, who has like 25 years. Oh, man. All right. Let's see. We're just going to get to questions. We're going to get to questions for sure. All right. Good for you. Now, please sit back down and let me do my job. Yes, it really is just... It really is. Brenda Davis said, I still don't see him killing his wife and son. I don't think you're alone in that. I don't think you are at all. But the judge was just like, You can see him wanting to say, I'm disinclined to acquiesce to that request. But the prosecution's filibuster did work. They held off with Murdaugh on the stand until the end of the day. And we are going to see him then, the experts coming in on Monday. The defense says that they have... 4 more witnesses and then a few rebuttal witnesses. We'll see what happens on Monday. So with that, let's get to questions. And then I think I have it. I need to check where I'm going to be. I think I'm going to be on News Nation tonight. I'll send it out. Okay. It looks like I'll be on News Nation around 8:15 Central this evening. So I will send that out. We also have some Law Nerd exclusive merch coming to our Law Nerds Unite community that we have been working on. There was a sneak peek over there and a sneak peek for our members here. So, Emily, time for you to take over as prosecution. Oh, no. Emily, I read that the judge was brought in and this is not where he normally judges. I have no idea. Also, why bring in a judge? I have no idea. I need to look. I have no idea whose show I'm on tonight. So for those of you who are like, News Nation, I don't know. What's the link for the appearance yesterday? Did not do the appearance yesterday. So, and bumped till tonight. So that works out well for me. I have no idea what show I'm on. I have no idea what time, whose show is on at 8 p.m. Central. There's a panel of lawyers. I just don't know. So you're saying this trial will actually end at some point? Yes. Yes, I am. It should end next week. It looks like we might have argument on Wednesday. Is they're looking for argument and charge, closing arguments and jury instructions is what they mean by argument and charge. But it's so much more fun. The way they say things in this court is way more fun. It's like argument and charge. It's just much more fun than saying jury instructions. Also, the way that they phrase certain mannerisms in this court, though this is a very informally run courtroom, there are certain mannerisms in the court that I just find to be delightful. Bring the jury being one of them. I find that absolutely to be a delight. And beg the court's indulgence. Yes, beg the court's indulgence. Casey Cat said Cuomo, but Brian Enton is covering at 8. Perfect. That would be delightful. Dan Abrams live. I don't know. So I don't know. I don't know whose show. I'll send it out. I don't. Things get scheduled while I'm streaming, and I'm like, sure. They're like, are you available at this time? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I like having conversations with people, and I've said no a lot lately because we've just been busy. This trial is giving me a headache. Same. All right. We're definitely working on bring the jury stuff. Do you think Creighton's lack of criminal experience shows he definitely has a lot of criminal experience? He has a lot of criminal experience. He doesn't seem to do a ton of murder cases. You can definitely tell that Creighton is looking at the financial crimes as a big factor, but I think he does get hung up on stuff. So he does a lot of the more traditional paper cases, but he's done some really big cases, in organized crime. So it's just it's interesting to see. So, all right, let us continue on with questions. Did I do the bumper for questions? I don't think I did. It's time to fack around. And I have a headache too. Did AM ever say what he did with the money? He alluded to $50,000 a week on pills, but not much more than that. And a lot of us went, Can Jim be called as a witness? Jim has made himself a witness in this case, but I don't think either side are going to call him. And the judge actually snarked at him about it at some point in time, because time is a construct and I don't remember days anymore. The judge snarked at him at one point and said, well, are you a witness in this? And he is. Karen said, why believe anything he says? And I think there's some things that are true in his testimony and some things that aren't. Coyota said 24 days in, and I'm just now noticing the thermostat, the all-powerful thermostat. Thank you for your coverage. I know the fact that the thermostat keeps changing is weird. It was 66 degrees yesterday above Alex's head. We've heard that this jury is cold and has blankets and all the things. Frankie's mom, Law Nerd Shop needs thumb holes. We're working on it. It is not, unfortunately, not easy. I would like an XL mango margarita, Judge. I mean, it's margarita time. If not Alex, then who and why? Well, the prosecution, I think, jumped the shark with vigilante 12-year-olds today. Wasn't thrilled with that argument at all. But I think if the defense is saying, look, the threats on social media were this and this and that, we've seen none of it. They could have subpoenaed all of it. And you would think that law enforcement would subpoena comments on Paul's social media. Even if they had been deleted, you can still get to most of them. But we've seen none of it in this trial. T-Mac, how many people gasped when he said incentivized? The chat did, but everybody in the courtroom keeps giggling at Poot's jokes. So we do, but they don't. Was the boat accident paid off? Would the deaths make it so you wouldn't have to pay anything out? The death of Paul stops the criminal investigation. It does not stop the civil cases in any way. But Tinsley testified, look, if Alec was the victim of a vigilante, if he's the victim of a vigilante, then they wouldn't have continued to go forward with the civil case because he would have been such a sympathetic defendant that they wouldn't have gotten a recovery on him. So they would have dropped it. So if he were a victim, Tinsley said they would have dropped it. And the point of the prosecution is Alec would have known that because Alec knows people and cases and how to read cases. And that if he's a victim, that with him being a victim, that's how he's going to be treated. My lights are now making me look purple and I'm kind of here for it, that we're just purpley. So with that, the civil case might have gone away. And that's different. There we go. The white balance on my camera is like, oh, thank you. Because the light outside keeps changing. We're back to my normal pale self, unfortunately. All right. Still so many questions. Yep. Yep. I got use theory own words, but it is the jury. Is the jury actually going to understand it? That comes down to closing argument, unless they've already made up their mind. The juror who put a blanket over her head yesterday put tissue in her ears today, per those in court. If a juror was putting tissues in their ears, I would think that the court would have taken a break and addressed it with the juror. But it is. I'll go look at the Twitter sphere. Emily, can they have an opioid specialist in rebuttal? Only if they've disclosed it. I have a problem with paranoia going on and off in a second. I think they might just allow the jury to use their own common sense, which they're allowed to. The response, "I would never hurt," to "Did you kill?" leads me to think he did it. A reasonable mind would respond, "I did not." And he did do that at the beginning of his testimony. If they died instantly, did they experience any hurt? That's a very fair point. It's distancing. He has at different points in his testimony say, "I did not," but it's different. How do they prep the defendant who's in custody? They generally have interview rooms where they can go interview with their lawyers. In court, it depends on the different courts and the transportation and the security, but they have things to do it. They have rooms where they can do it. The thermostat controls have been hijacked by a 13-year-old boy or by Mark Tinsley, one or the other. Probably by Mark Tinsley. If AM's lawyers knew he was lying and continued repeating that lie in court, can the lawyers be charged with perjury? There are very limited circumstances. It's not as easy of an answer, but there are very limited circumstances where you could get that kind of aiding and abetting perjury, the subordinating, which I can't pronounce at all. My tongue just refuses to say subordinating perjury back to back because it's too difficult. But there are very limited circumstance. And if they believe their client and are repeating what their client has told them, it falls, I think, very well under zealous advocacy. So it is a very, very fine line. It's different. Civil cases are different. Making statements to government are different. But in a criminal case, we'll see. Tryhard said, please balance showing vid of when he called 911 versus powerful emotional reaction. Who benefits more, humanizes him, how key is motive in cases. It depends on the case. A lot of cases, we never even touch motive because A, you can't explain what people do, and B, well, you just don't need to, or you don't have it. But this case has a lot of moving pieces, and I think they wanted very much to explain all of the moving pieces in this case. What amount of GSR found significant for someone who fired that many shots with an assault rifle and shotgun? Or was the amount of GSR found sufficient? No. The GSR found does not indicate someone who had just recently fired all of those guns, which again leads me to believe that he cleaned off or he didn't do it. Did he wear a badge when he went to support Greg Alexander or whatever his name was? He said that they went to court, him and his daddy went to court to sit there and support their friend and maybe to intimidate Sled a little bit. Some people lie so much that they begin to think it's the truth. Denise, I think you are right on that. And I think Alec is probably one of them. Does that mean he committed these murders? I am Cash. Good to see you. Is C trying to say AM spent those 4 minutes cleaning up the traces of blood in the house, tons of blood from killing his wife and son and changing clothes? I'm not buying it. I assume he would have tracked blood in the house. I mean, if he cleaned up at the house or if he cleaned up in the skinning shed or the hoses out by, the thing is the state can't really get into it because it's too much like there's this and then there's this and then there's this, and that's hard. Can the prosecution completely change strategies? Dr. R, criminologist, this is why I think there's a lot of reasons why I think testifying for this defendant was a mistake, but this is a big one for me. Him testifying allows the prosecution to easily change their theories and easily argue their change of theories without looking like they just don't know what they're doing or like they changed it mid like trial. His testimony gives them reason to change it. So that. Motive, Paul was finished going to jail, life ruined. Maggie had nothing left after Alex stole and was disbarred, so he killed them. I don't know. And I don't know if Paul would have gone to jail for all that long, truthfully. I think people would have been outraged about it, but I don't know how to account he would have been held in the boat wreck. Christy Taylor, 100% fact, if this was my kid, I'd be inconsolable and would be losing my mind. I freaked out when my dad passed from cancer. My son diagnosed with cancer. Very inconsolable diagnosis. I can understand, and I hope all the best for your son. Emily Poot makes it back into the courtroom so late after these breaks, it's caused Jim to resort to staging objection filibusters. I don't know about that, but he has been wandering. Lauren Owens said, without going into too many details, I completely understand why Alec is saying about not knowing when he decided to lie in a moment of pure panic. I agree too. And the way Creighton is talking to him just gets under my skin. I'm 50-50. I think Creighton saying, when did you decide to lie, shows that Creighton doesn't read people very well. Truly, you decided to lie here. Creighton, that's not the gotcha moment. The gotcha moment is him saying, I can tell you for a fact. Here's the moment of all of that testimony, other than saying there was no one else there. Where is it? I marked it. The wrong person saw that on social media. I can tell you for a fact they hated Paul Murdaugh and had anger in their heart. And Creighton zoomed right past it because he wanted to be like, is this the moment you decided to lie? No, Creighton, he lies. Fuck's sake. Emily, bigger ego, prosecutor or Murdaugh? I don't know. It was definitely a battle of the two egos. A huge battle of the two egos, wasn't it? Yep. Alec is in prison, privileged level. Question. He's in jail because he hasn't been convicted yet. And he seems to be getting along just fine with people putting money on his books and being able to trade beef sticks and work out. And he seems to be getting along just fine. Judge Newman's face when Poot said that was priceless. Yep. Mama Bear said he wants to go to federal prison. I think that's what his defense attorneys want him to do. He's being held in a prison. It might be because it's the closest. That's possible. But he's not in prison yet, technically. He's still pending conviction. So he is still, that's the striation of levels. If he's actually being housed in a physical prison, that's fine. So let's see. I think both Shelley and Blanca must have been confused. As he said, Alec had no reason to ask Shelley to lie. Blanca was sure Alec was wearing a polo shirt in the morning, and that's not what's in the tree video. I don't know if they were confused or if they were scared of him. Where did he get pills between withdrawals on the 6th and the interviews on the 7th when he said no withdrawals then? They went home. So they had been away at the baseball game and then they went home. So maybe at home. If found innocent, could Murdaugh sue SLED for how awful they handled the investigation? I haven't seen anything SLED's done that would get them past all the hurdles that there are to suing law enforcement. Could people try to sue law enforcement? Yes, you can always try. Would that be advisable in this case? No. Nope. Rascal Pupper said, question, sorry if this has been asked, if he's found guilty / not guilty, does Buster get Alec's life insurance? No, he's still alive. If so, can they just pay for all the money crimes Alec's been charged with using insurance money to get him out of jail? No. He's not dead, so no one's getting his insurance. I don't think he had occupational coverage, so it's not like you can't work. And even if he had occupational insurance, which lawyers tend to not do, but then he got disbarred for stealing from his clients, it probably wouldn't cover him. So I don't think insurance is an option. And he was underinsured in the boat case. So there's that. Kimberly said, why wouldn't he ask about Alec? Let me try again. Why wouldn't he ask Alec about sister's statement regarding thinking about doing it a long time? That would have been the perfect time. I don't know. Maybe to not let him explain so they can just argue it. Allie asked, quote, Stephen Smith rumored Buster relationship, bad luck for the family. Gloria found pills, bad luck for the family. Paul's boat case, bad luck for the family. Maggie divorce, bad luck for the family. Suicide, financial problems, bad luck. I hear you. And I think that's where people are looking at this family, especially those who've been following all of the things connected to this family, are looking at this going, there's just too many coincidences that when things go bad, people wind up dead. What would the angle of the gunshot be from a golf cart? Has that been addressed? We have not seen that be addressed. As per Alec's description, the composite image of his bogus shooter looks like Anthony Cook, Mallory's boyfriend. No coincidence. I need to go back and look. I haven't gone back and looked. Didn't Murdaugh testify Moselle was in Maggie's name? Yep. He said it had equity. Even without life insurance, Maggie's death benefited him financially. He's arguing that it didn't because it would be so hard to get that money. So hard to get that money. Also, I do have to remind the Law Nerds, if you want to stay in the loop with what we're doing, lawnerdalert.com will loop you in. Y'all broke it like 4 times yesterday, and I love you for it. So I don't think you're going to break it again today. But Nightbot's been sharing the link if you want to hit it, but lawnerdalert.com will do that. Rebecca said, Eric Bland said he couldn't find any evidence that Alec actually had life insurance. It's never come up. Everyone's just taken him at his word on it, but I haven't seen documentation of that, though I've heard people talk about the insurance policy, but the prosecution never confronted him about it. Water and Fire Tarot, this is a smart angle for AM to take because it's putting the same thought with the jury. Do we trust SLED? And I think that's why he keeps saying it. I think that's why he keeps saying it over and over. He criticizes SLED, but yet he called so many people to the crime scene that night. But maybe that's why. I don't trust SLED once he saw SLED was showing up. But he called all those people to the crime scene before SLED showed up. To be fair, I don't think he knew SLED was going to show up. Karen Gray says, hi, Paige. Emily, I got Paige hooked on your channel. Thanks to both of you. You're welcome. Esme said, stop beating a dead chicken, Creighton. It's fair. I don't know. Did Bubba kill the chicken? I think Bubba gets a pass on this one. Sharon said, I'm having Malibu and Coke to celebrate 700. Thank you so much. Livian said, question, don't you think a wealthy liar, thief, user would have at least a secret hiding place to hide the weapons? I don't know. I mean, they had a big old weapon room. I don't know, but I think he had a lot of people around, a lot of space around, a lot of land around, but where are the guns is a huge question in this case. It's a huge question in this case. Owned by 3 bullies, and Dane, thank you for the congratulations text. I found you when you first started Depp v. Heard trial, so was there when you hit those big bings? Yes, I was immediately hooked. Can't wait to see where you go next. I mean, here on Monday. What are you doing to celebrate? No, I'll be here on Monday. I've got quick bits that I'm still behind on. I've got to record next week's podcast. If you haven't watched this week's podcast, by the way, and you need a mental break from this case, oh my God, this week's podcast is so wild. First of all, other YouTubers are looped into it. They talk about Dr. Grande. The lawsuit talks about Marquis. The lawsuit talks about iNabber, talks about all of the other media covering the Idaho murders case and the TikToker who accused a University of Idaho professor of hiring those murders of the 4 University of Idaho students. So the TikToker representing herself is now suing the professor. It is wild. So if you need a break and you're like, I like wild law, but I need a break from this. Yep. So a bunch of YouTubers are mentioned. I am not, Atuzi is not, and I'm happy for it. Lauren C. said, I'll send you Ruffles all dressed from Canada. Thank you, Lauren C. I need to go ask. I need to just ask my local grocery store. I've been ordering them off of Amazon. Yep. And I love them. They're my favorite chips by far. Oh my God. Pavlov. I'm actually just like, chips. They're my favorite. I love them. Congratulations. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. I'll only watch you from now on. Well, thank you. Why is no one from Creighton's team encouraging him to chill the fuck out? Emotions run high when you're cross-examining a defendant in a case. It's something that doesn't happen every day. And it is, well, it's a real exciting moment as a prosecutor when you get to cross-examine a defendant. And when you get to cross-examine a defendant who you have, Creighton is the only prosecutor on all of these cases. He's the lead prosecutor on all of these cases. He knows everything Alec has done. Everything Alec has done. So he's just like, tell me more about how you lied to your clients. He wants to know it all. So that's where we're at. Natalie Ball, Emily, I listened to you, and boy, I would have loved to have seen you as a prosecutor. You can see my arguments here. I mean, I can argue pretty effectively for both sides, but I don't think you can be. I think it's most effective as an attorney to be able to see both sides of a thing, because then you can find your arguments. I did not like the 12-year-old vigilante stuff. Adventure Media, YouTube, I think that's extremely unlikely that there was only one shooter in this case. Had there been a long gun and a handgun used, I'd be much more likely to believe a single shooter, but not two long guns. Fair. Your thoughts on a tight timeline? Like everything else in this case, it goes both ways. How did he get clean? How was he so clean? He was so clean that he clearly cleaned up. But when did he clean up? It's a hard timeline. And I think the defense and prosecution are both arguing the timeline. And it's tough. And I think some of the jurors are going to be like, there's no way. And some of the jurors are going to be like, but then why lie? Who does closing argument first? Great question, Shane. Prosecution, defense, prosecution gets a rebuttal. So closing argument for the prosecution, closing argument for the defense, rebuttal argument for the prosecution. And I think they want Poot to argue it. Poot got a little disjointed in his opening. Creighton started his opening with bang, bang. So it's going to be very theatrical. It's going to be very much give him the old razzle dazzle in this closing. It's a very theatrical court. That's fair. Shanique Floyd, why would the lawyers show up at an active crime scene? Was it to cover up? It's so wild. I don't doubt that he wanted the support of his friends either way. I don't doubt that he wanted everyone to be there. I think he wanted witnesses to see him. And I think it's like, what would, if you think he did it, what would an innocent person do? If you think he didn't do it, this is the most horrific thing that's ever happened to me. I need all of my people. Also, Southern culture, people show up. People show up physically for support. That is very much a thing. So I think it can go both ways, but they've argued it back and forth. You know, they argued that, well, and then they didn't secure the crime scene well, but he called all his friends and they were not discourteous, but they weren't kicking everybody out. It's just, did he use the golf cart to dump Maggie's phone? I don't think he had time. I don't know who, Maggie's phone is a big sticking point for me. Big sticking point. Chris said Hattie B's was awesome. I'm so glad. Thanks, Leonard's going through AM cross withdrawals, joining the rewatch crew on the trip home. Enjoy the trip home. Hattie B's is good. You asked for good hot chicken. Hattie B's is good to hot chicken. Janet said Emily's not favoring the prosecution or the defense. She's only sharing her knowledge. I try to, and I will always say which side I like better. Right now, both there are attorneys on both sides that just annoy the shit out of me in this case. Just annoy the hell out of me in the style of how they do things. But I'm always going to give you both sides. And the person that's being questioned is the one I'm most critical of. So the last 2 days, that's been Alec Murdaugh. Basic human need. Why make sense of things? Find a reason, understand why someone does something like take a life without possible reason. Hung jury. Thoughts. I think I've said a lot that I think this is a case that a hung jury is very possible. I don't know if there's enough evidence to convince all jurors on all sides. So, Lion said using hurt instead of murder seen in so many cases. Question, why just get rid of Maggie's phone and leave Paul's? I don't know. It's a very good question, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of speculation that can be done, but I don't know. Could it be because he had Maggie's code and wanted to open the phone and take a look, but then didn't? I don't know. I don't know. It's sus. But if it's someone that's not him and Paul's phone is on Paul and they've taken Maggie's phone, why not just grab them both? And why throw them down the road in the same way he's going back and forth to his mom's house? What are the chances that whoever did this, if it's not him, is heading that direction? I don't know. I don't know. So I'm craving all dress trips. That's fair. Me too. I wonder if he let people on the scene before Sled showed up to obfuscate the evidence, to muddy the waters. Maybe. And some will see it that way. Or because he didn't even think it would be a problem. Because of course he can just do whatever. He's never had consequences. He's never had accountability. He's been able to get away with the little hiccups with money at the law firm. It always got covered up. And so I see a very real argument when he's like, I didn't think that being confronted at work June 7th was a confrontation. Because it had always worked out in the past and he thought Chris Wilson was going to keep covering for him. So I I believe him when he said that didn't seem like a big confrontation to me. It was a big confrontation to Jeannie Seconder because she had to confront somebody who's never confronted with consequences with some really bad stuff. But he was like, he was annoyed he was being questioned for sure. But he thought, I think on the 7th, he thought he could talk his way out of it. So then it gets back to, but then why? But then why? Don't know. Paul's was in his pocket. Maybe Maggie had hers out in her hand if it wasn't him. Or he wanted to see if Maggie tried to call 911. How long is the 911 call? I don't remember how long the 911 call is. It's like 10 minutes. It's long, the 2 911 calls together, but then there's another 20 minutes till law enforcement shows up. But if that's true and it's him, why call 911 right when you get back to the house? Because he knows the GPS data will tell. I don't know. So, Emily, you're so good. My previous super chat was a compliment. Did I misread it? I might have misread it. I don't know. Or did I read it? We have a lot. I know I don't get to all of them, which is an apology. Emily E said it wasn't dignified enough to be a competition of egos. It was an old-fashioned, undignified pissing contest. Do not like Creighton style. There was definitely some of that. Yeah, there was definitely some of that. Rain said, think it wonky AM calls son and wife by full names, puts distance between him and them. At sometimes he did, and then at sometimes he was like Paw Paw and Mags and Ro and, I don't know, all the rest of it. Emily, what day are you on in Love and Pies? I think 20. I think day 20. Question, how do you pick which questions to answer? It's what I click on. It just depends on what I click on. Truly, that is as far as it goes. And I try to get to as many as I can. When I see question or the question marks in the front, it makes it easier for me to know I'm grabbing a question and not a comment when I'm limited on time. So when the mods say just put a question mark or Q or say question, it makes it much easier for me to grab them because I can actually see it. Julie said, question, EDB, can you please explain the charges and what it means to find him guilty? I think there's some confusion. He's being charged with first-degree murder of Paul and Maggie. He's also being charged with having guns while committing the crimes. What does that mean? It means at some point he decided to kill them and then killed them beyond a reasonable doubt. And we will hear that broken down more with the jury instructions. But what they're going to have to prove is at some point he decided with malice aforethought, meaning a state of mind, not an accident, not a gun went off, but he decided, and it can be a very quick decision, but he decided to kill them and then killed them. So that, what does it mean to find him guilty? It means that the jury believes beyond a reasonable doubt that he did it. For those of you asking in the chat, and I've seen a couple ask, what if there's a hung jury? If it's me, this prosecution team doesn't do what I would do. But I've also found through covering a lot of these cases and looking at cases as a legal commentator across the country that the filing standards that we held in Los Angeles were much, much higher than what I'm seeing elsewhere. Like we required internally more evidence to file things. And I'm looking at cases, I'm like, you chose to do that? Okay. I wouldn't have done that. But I'm also seeing that when you're in a big prosecutorial agency, when there are lots of crimes all the time, you don't go after the things that are like, I don't know if we're going to be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. You go for the cases that you have the evidence on, or you have reason to believe you will have the evidence on when you get back the cell phones or whatever. Our charging standards were quite high. And the Fed's charging standards are high beyond that. So it's interesting when I look at this case. I wouldn't have charged this case. With this evidence. So if there's a hung jury, I would want to know how they hung, which always sounds weird. I would want to know what the split was. Is it one holdout? Is it 6-6? I'd want to know. I would talk to the jury after if the jury would talk to the attorneys. They often do in cases that last this long, but I would want to talk to the jury. And then I would decide. And I would probably wait to make that decision for a while. I wouldn't be rushing to retry it. And if he's going to get, if he's going to get life on all the financial crimes, I don't know if it's worth it to retry it. Truly. I don't know what the benefit is. I don't know if it brings closure to anyone. So, when does the trial end? Evidence should end on maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, and then there will be closing arguments, and then it will go to the jury. How long the jury will deliberate? You got to give them at least like a half a day to a day per day of trial. So, the jury could deliberate 3, 4, 5 days. Question, do you think the gym orchestra could have been involved? I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. Question, was it okay for Alec to leave the stand when the judge didn't dismiss him? I think the judge said okay. I don't think Alec would have just left. Then again, he just kind of does what he wants, so maybe. But I think it was fine. Not like Amber Heard just walking out of court before court was adjourned for the day. Couldn't he be found guilty by opportunity after all the timing? Who else could have been? That's just circumstantial evidence. Opportunity and motive are in the same instruction. So opportunity, motive, absence of mistake are all in there together. If it's hung, focus on financial cases. Don't waste more of the taxpayers' money. I think they look for a plea on the financial case. He's not getting out of custody one way or the other. I don't know if the jury hangs what happens. Not a question. Judge is giving Morgan Freeman. I really do like this judge. I don't agree with everything this judge does. I don't think as humans we ever agree with everything everybody does all the time anyway. But I really like this judge's demeanor, and I have found him to be consistent even when I don't agree with his rulings. I think he has a good demeanor with the jury. I think he's getting tired just like everybody else is, but I think he's had really well-reasoned opinions. I know not everybody agrees with that, but I do. See, Blythe, sometimes they come up twice when I see the question. And that was by happenstance. This jumped because I was trying to grab that. Timely, I hope I pronounced that correctly. When did another person get time and opportunity to commit the murders? Alex said no one else was around. Right. And that's part of it. That's a big, big part of it. Ever seen a defendant argue with a judge? Not like that. I have absolutely seen defendants argue with judges, but not quite like that. Not quite like that. I mean, we saw Brooks argue with the judge nonstop. And with that, y'all, I'm going to go see my kiddos. I can't believe we hit 700,000. Cheers to you. I'm going to definitely have a whiskey later on this evening. I will keep you posted around our places, around all of our members' places and spaces so that I can let you know when and where I am on TV tonight. I'm going to take a break over the weekend. We've got to get next week's podcast ready to go. I think we're going to be talking about Alec Baldwin and Rust, but we'll see. I'm going to let the members know what I'm thinking and see what they think over on Law Nerds Unite and here on YouTube. With that, thank you all. I can't believe we hit 700K. Yay. And I will see you. Well, I'll see you around the interwebs a little bit over the weekend, but truthfully, I will see you on Monday. Why didn't they put Alec Murdaugh up last? Why are there other witnesses? And are the other witnesses going to go to explain his behavior? Will we see experts that deal with addiction, psychology? I don't know. We'll have to wait till Monday. See you then.
Hey there, I'm Emily D.
That's the wrong bumper, Emily.
You can find all the Law Nerd goodies at lawnerdshop.com. Connect with me on social media at the Emily D. Baker. And don't forget to check out my podcasts, The Emily Show, and the new podcast, Quick Bits, summarizing everything I talk about on my Tuesday and Thursday live streams. You know, when you only have time for just the quick bits.